The Great Millennium has spanned the world, where the 4 emperors of races and beasts rule over the divine beast continent. Currently, a crisis has engulfed the ape race, and the king has been killed, and the ministers are deep in intrigue and fighting for the crown. The king's son, Lu Zhuan, returns to Dunxian, the territory of the monkey race, after a 3-year wandering. Also arriving in this area is a girl with purple hair, traveling on a large wolf, admiring the beauty of the ocean, apparently seeing it for the first time. There are also young geniuses here, and will the guy be able to uncover the truth about his father's death and stand against the wild boar race from the demonic mountain? He has to make the wild boar race lose face, but they do not intend to lose to the monkey with the pitiful spirit of the promotion sphere. The leader of this clan is determined to grind the petty impostor into powder. The young monkey prince simply laughed when he heard this, and this brute with the pitiful spirit of the god realm is no match for him. The place where fate brought the heroes together is one of the local ports, and the sky above it is light blue, like the water in the sea washing it, where seagulls fly. One day, an unusual guest arrives at this place, a girl riding on a huge white wolf, a rarity in these parts. Her name was Xiao Zhao. First of all, she enjoyed the ocean, admiring its blue color, identical to the color of the sky. After looking at the landscape, she stroked her pet and thanked him for his help. Suddenly a voice addressed them, calling the girl by name and asking if the journey had tired her, and the wolf immediately began to growl. The animal was disturbed by sounds from the depths of the water, which seemed strange, because there was no one on the horizon. A moment later, the water near the pier began to foam strongly, and something huge rose from the water. Before their eyes, a huge ship emerged from the water, presenting an incredible sight to those who stood on the shore. Xiao Zhao was delighted. She had never seen something like this before, and the ship was incredibly beautiful, causing the others to freeze with their mouths open. This thing was not just huge, it could be called gigantic. The water around it rose several meters up. As soon as the soldiers at the pier saw this, they began to beat drums, and the Prince of Beasts returned. The guy was looking forward to meeting his native land, standing at the very edge of his frigate and looking ahead. Lu Zhuan finally returned to his home, and he had already heard rumors about what was happening here, and he was determined to get to the bottom of everything. When one of his soldiers heard about this, he wondered why Lu Zhuan called this place his homeland. This was truly his homeland, and the city was where the prince of the land of the monkeys spent his childhood and youth. As soon as Lu Zhuan stepped off the ship, the soldiers addressed him with respect, bowing their heads and addressing him as Your Highness. They were very happy that their rightful heir had returned home, and the chief elder was familiar to Lu Zhuan, and he recognized him. The elder gave him the sad news, blaming himself and his people for the death of the great king of the land of monkeys, not knowing who was behind his murder. But Lu Zhuan asks the elder not to blame himself, since no one could have foreseen this, and the identity of the killer does not matter. The guy expresses his determination to avenge his father's death. Even if the King of Heaven himself turns out to be the culprit, he will have to pay. The elder invites Lu Zhuan to go to heaven and relax after a long journey. The path to heaven is a huge area, with 3 tanks in the center and a huge monkey statue at the end. There are also 18 pillars representing levels of cultivation from perception to control. The prince enters the water without removing his armor to measure his progress during his travels. When he left his home, he was at the 4th stage of soul cultivation, but after 3 years, his results surprised everyone. For some reason, Lu Zhuan could only light 2 pillars, which was worse than before, and how he went down 2 steps was something he didn't want to discuss. The man asks how this could have happened, but the prince chose not to tell, saying that it was a long story. Those gathered around were surprised, and he used to be considered a young talent, number 1 on the path to heaven. Someone recalls a rumor that the wild boar emperor was afraid of the guy's talent and tried to kill him, forcing the monkey king to hide his son in the southern seas. Yuan Fan came to see Lu Zhuan's strength, but saw only disappointment, and the second elder's daughter declares that now he will definitely be the first on the body refinement tower path. rumors begin to spread among the crowd that such an heir to the throne will only disgrace their kingdom in front of other races. The elder was very angry at these words, and it was unacceptable to be rude to the prince, and although Yuan Fang's father temporarily ruled the kingdom, the rightful heir returned. The man wondered how long he and his father could remain arrogant towards Lu Zhuan. In response, Lu Zhuan suggested that the man go home and rest, and in his opinion, the elder was too emotional, and there was a risk of making a mistake at any moment. Yuan Fan is surprised that even after the worthless previous king of these lands, he still has loyal subjects. Lu Zhuan does not react to these words, only reminding the upstart that his father served the king, which means Yuan Fan himself served garbage. A companion of the young prince approaches Yuan Fan and warns him that if he continues to throw around such words, danger awaits him. This person appears to be a member of the Kuan Pong race, with a high level of cultivation. But he still had something to say, and the past cannot be changed, and the heir is now not a young genius, but a disgrace to the entire ape race. At the end, he says that in 3 days he will reach the stage of heavenly fusion, and his power will become even more impressive. The man is surprised. Yuan Fang only reached the divine soul stage half a month ago. How could he rise to the next level in just 15 days? The two comrades do not attach much importance to these words, and the guy with unusual skin warns that he will be fed to the fish. Lu Zhuan reacts calmly, claiming that the heavenly radiant stage is no longer unattainable for him. After this, he suggests returning to the city of the heavenly path, and the elder is ready to follow any of his instructions. Suddenly, an unusual beast, a snow-white wolf, on which Xiao Zhao arrived, approaches. His appearance is spectacular, and as soon as he approached, he began to dry his fur, splashing water on those around him. Following the beast, the girl herself comes, announcing that she is going to buy a large ship. The guys and the man are a little confused about what she means, and this ship is not for sale. The elder advises them to hurry to avoid this upstart reaching the Skyway City first, otherwise rumors of his power will spread quickly, and this could become a problem. Lu Zhuan looks at Xiao Zhao carefully, and her request looks strange, and she does not look like a member of the monkey race. Apparently, she belongs to the Ice Ridge Sky Wolf race from the northern region, and she wears simple but high-quality clothing and holds a wolf-headed staff. This girl turns out to be not as simple as she seems, and since she subjugated the northern region, she has been constantly rejected, and apparently her sister was right, and there are no good people outside. After that, she called her wolf named Xiao Kai and invited her to go to the city to play, but it turned out that the wolf had run away somewhere. In an attempt to find her pet, Xiao Zhao looked around, and it turned out that the heir's comrade did not like the beast, and as soon as he saw it, the wolf immediately bit him on the buttocks. As a result, the friend grabbed Lu Zhuan so tightly that he almost strangled him, and the man tried to pull the animal away, but he was not very good at it. The events then moved to the forest near the port, where there is a group of mercenaries who, on the orders of the Great Elder, are going to kill the young monkey prince. The same forest is headed by Lu Zhuan, and this is the shortest route to the capital, and she calls her new friends to keep up. It's easy for her to say so, because all this time she rode astride her faithful assistant, while the two friends walked on their own feet. She was the representative of the Frostwolf region at the king's funeral, and it was dangerous for her to walk through these places alone. The girl apologized for the incident with the wolf, and Xiao Kai was usually very friendly. She was just trying to protect her master. The hero asked why she was here, since the northern region where she comes from is very far from here. Xiao Zhao showed him a gold medallion with a wolf emblem and told him that she was the ambassador of the wolf race of the northern region, and she had come to express condolences for the loss of the Monkey King. She also introduced herself and found out the prince's name. Thus they took the first step towards meeting each other. The young heir's friend decided to find out why the girl did not join the elder, and it turned out that everyone else took the main road, and they had to take a detour to avoid detection. It was dangerous for Xiao Zhao to follow along with everyone, and the guy decided not to do anything until his father's funeral was completed, and the plan was to deal with everything after that. His friend still had pain in his buttock, and from their conversation it became clear that this was not the first such incident with him. Lu Zhuan tried to cheer him up by promising that when they arrived in the city, he would find the best blacksmith to make him a new armor and he would no longer worry about such bites, and suddenly their girlfriend appeared in front of them. Sitting on her wolf, she reported that, apparently, something had happened ahead, and her comrades were trying to find out from her what exactly had happened. As it turned out, there was a skirmish ahead, and from afar the screams of several men could be heard. Apparently warriors from the country of boars were present there. This was confirmed when they saw one of the soldiers forced to his knees and threatened, and the worker warned the attacker that revenge would be inevitable. This mine was the territory of the monkey clan, and without the king's permission, no one could use it, and in response to this, the soldier laughed, because their king was dead. To farewell the departed ruler, the boar emperor sent a special envoy, and his carriage was pulled by several war boars. But this fortress on wheels was so worn out that they decided to use the mine to restore it, and after that the fat man forcefully kicked the man's leg and chest. Because of this, the worker fell to the ground, and the boar clan overstepped all boundaries of decency. But what could trained and armed warriors from another country do before being attacked by the brute and armed members of the boar clan? And they were ready to defeat these intruders with no intention of sparing anyone. However, just as one of the attackers raised his sword above the man's head, about to strike him, his blade suddenly stopped and a large chain with a golden glow wrapped around him. Then the same chains went to other soldiers, and none of them even had time to understand where they came from, and as a result, all the attackers were neutralized. The worker, who was already ready to say goodbye to his life, could not believe his eyes, and he turned around and saw his savior. It was Lu Zhuan, who defeated several fighters from another country in a few seconds, and the guy used an unusual technique, which was luminous chains. After a few seconds, the chains on the hero's hands disappeared, and maintaining this ability required great effort. Thanks to Lu Zhuan's timely intervention, he was able to save these people, and fortunately, they all escaped unharmed. Immediately after this, a rough male voice came from the huge carriage, and the man inside was clearly unhappy with what he saw. Suddenly, the space around was filled with an unusual purple glow. This energy began to spread in all directions and amazed the remaining warriors of the land of the boar. A fighter with a massive sword emerged from a huge iron box, and his displeasure was manifested in the fact that these nonentities had so humiliated the honor of his country by allowing themselves to be defeated by some youth with a sphere of advancement. This warrior immediately demonstrated his strength by cutting a huge stone next to him with one swing of his blade, and he advised the guy to be obedient and get out of here quickly. If he did this, he might be able to save his life. Otherwise, the envoy of the land of the boar would end his fate right here. But Lu Zhuan was not at all afraid, and the guy was not going to give in to this man, because at the moment the heir was in his native land. The thug from the land of the boar was surprised by this reaction, and usually people screamed in fear when he appeared, and he asked the hero who he was. The future emperor introduced himself to the villain, after which the warrior replied that his name was Zhu Chun, and he could not understand how this guy dared to stand in his way. Lu Zhuan could not believe that this scoundrel was an ambassador, and threats and robberies were unacceptable for a representative of another country, and thus he was desecrating all the inhabitants of the land of the boar. But the man knew that the king was dead, and even if he killed someone from his circle, even the current ruler, he would not face the consequences. In response to this, the guy noted that the current ruler no longer represents the monkey race. Ru Chun stood steadfast, insisting that the prince obey, and he offered to give the sparkling stone to the land of the boar, claiming that only in this way could the prince survive. Lu Zhuan picked up the shiny stone and asked the thug if this was what he was so eager to achieve. Xiao Zhao pulled out the medicine and invited the worker to take it, and at this time the man shouted to the young heir, strongly advising him not to betray this stone to his enemies. Zhu Chun did not expect that the son of the great king of the monkey country would be so weak, and he guessed that the guy must be smart, and now he should agree to his conditions. Lu Zhuan apologized to the ambassador and with a smile threw a glowing crystal directly at his forehead, and this stone was found here. The stone hit its target, leaving a bruise on the man's forehead, which drove him crazy. The brute instantly activated his power and, shouting that he would kill this monkey, rushed to the attack. A moment later, he unleashed a strike known as a multiple wave flash, and in the eyes of the spectators, the purple blade seemed to split the space around them. The workers are amazed at the level of skill with the sword, but the guy remains calm and stands in the same place. His comrade notes that this is the stage of soul destruction, and for Lu Zhuan this thug is not a rival. At one point, golden chains appeared around the hero, and his opponent is too confident in himself, thinking that he can destroy him to powder. After a few seconds, the force emanating from the guy takes on the shape of a huge monkey. Lu Zhuan points his chains directly at Ru Chun in response to his attack, and the thug does not have time to dodge, and the young heir's technique throws him aside. The brute flies several meters away and crashes into a rock, and the stones fly in different directions, but even such damage does not force the messenger to give up. He quickly gets to his feet and promises to show the guy how boars have always easily defeated monkeys, and even Lu Zhuan is amazed by such tenacity. Their powers collide again, and the moment the purple blades touch the golden chains, the earth seems to tremble. It seems to the audience that the strength of both opponents is approximately equal, and over time, neither of them causes serious damage to the enemy. A clear favorite was never identified, and at some point they decide to stop the fight and assess the current situation. Lu Zhuan realizes that his enemy is not in the soul destruction stage, but in the heaven formation stage, and it turns out that he was hiding his true potential. Ru Chun cannot understand who this strange guy is, and whether it is possible at the spiritual movement stage to force the messenger to use almost all of his power. The brute again rushed to attack, and the prince was already preparing to parry, but suddenly his comrade asked him to stop. He reminded the heir to the throne to remember his previous wounds and asked to be given the opportunity to deal with this powerful rival. After this, the guy's body began to emit a strange blue energy, and he was ready to put Zhu Chun in his place. The big man remembered that this man was probably from the Kuanpong race, and they had good relations with the monkey race, which was why the king sent his son out for fear of losing him. The thought came into his mind that these two clans were up to something together, and they probably had a common plan. The brute did not expect such a turn from the former ruler of these lands, and it was necessary to find out as soon as possible what they were planning. But first of all, it was necessary to get rid of this obsessive monkey, and to do this, the envoy put his blades together, and when this happened, everyone around felt the real power of Zhu Chun. Eventually, his two blades merged into one huge sword, and the power put into this weapon was so enormous that lightning bolts began to emanate from its blade, and this technique was called the three deadly swords. The brute lifted it up and with a powerful movement created a huge wave of energy in the air, and this blow was known as the first sword of furious killing. The guy also did not stand aside, and he threw his umbrella into the air, and instantly the tool turned into a light blue dragon. In the next moment, their blows collided, and it was incredibly difficult to determine the likely winner in this situation. After the collision of these two powerful attacks, the entire ground at the point of contact was shattered into small pieces. Suddenly, Zhu Chun notices in the periphery of his vision that Lu Zhuan is standing right behind him, and the thug instantly has the idea of finishing off the young prince with a single powerful blow. Xiao Zhao notices something strange in the envoy's behavior, and she sees that the enemy is ready to change the direction of his next attack. Ru Chun aims his strike, known as the second diagonal sword, directly towards Lu Zhuan. The guy did not expect such a move from his opponent, and it seems that he does not have time to dodge this attack. Suddenly, a large arc of purple energy is stopped by Shao Kai with his teeth, and this wolf not only serves as a means of transportation. The girl raises her staff and orders the envoy of the land of boars to stop immediately. The man, in turn, looks at Xiao Zhao with admiration, and he is pleasantly surprised by the level of power of this sister. He soon notices that she is holding a special staff with the head of a bastard, and now the thug understands the reason why this girl was able to repel his attack. This staff could only be wielded if you were a member of the Frostwolf race. Moreover, only a few representatives of this race had enough strength to subjugate the spirit of the White Wolf King. Zhu Chun realized that he did not have enough strength to fight everyone at once, and this wolf alone posed a great threat. The monkey race had probably teamed up with others, and if the situation continued like this, he would feel uneasy and should retreat and report this to his uncle, the Wild Boar Emperor. Suddenly, the messenger's face changed from serious to cheerful, and he said that he was glad to meet representatives of 3 different races at the same time. The man also apologizes for his actions and explains that this is quite common in their lands, and the young heir was amazed by such statements. Realizing that he should leave this place as quickly as possible, Zhu Chun says goodbye to everyone and runs straight to his huge carriage. In parting, he turns to the girl and invites her to visit the Mountain of Spirits, and there he could show her some interesting things. Xiao Zhao is annoyed by such obscene words addressed to her, and she is not used to being addressed in this way. Her faithful friend immediately notices that the hostess is in a bad mood and believes that the situation needs to be corrected somehow. In her usual style, Xiao Kai decided to take action, and she rushed at one of the boars pulling the carriage and bit him hard on the back. Under its influence, the cart suddenly acquired speed, and the ambassador, who was just about to climb inside, unsuccessfully overturned to the ground, and the wolf cub brilliantly coped with his task. Lu Zhuan expressed gratitude to her friend for her help, emphasizing that it was a matter of honor, because she cannot stand bullies, especially such freaks. After asking the young prince about his well-being, the girl heard that his wounds were not serious and they should quickly head to the capital. At this time, a group of mercenaries captured the elder and began to interrogate him, seeking to extract information about the location of the heir. The scene moves to the capital of the land of the monkeys, where the main palace was preparing for the arrival of the rightful heir. Gulan, the second elder of the country, decided to ask the chief elder Yuan Hong how long they would have to wait for Lu Zhuan to arrive. The temporary ruler did not have time to answer this question, since his son, turning to him, announced his return. Yuan Fan hurried to report to his father that the young prince turned out to be a helpless scum. Yuan Hong questioned the information, but the second elder advised him to trust his son, claiming that he had seen everything with his own eyes. As a result, the temporary head of the country decides to bury the king immediately, shocking Gulan, because the preliminary funeral was planned for the next day. The advisor begs Yuan Hong to pause the process, since the prince has just arrived in the country, and they do not yet know whether the guy has managed to enter the capital, and starting the funeral now would be inappropriate. But Yuan Hong does not want to discuss the funeral with someone whom he considers evil spirits, and after all, for the sake of the monkey race, he fought for 10 whole years. In response, the temporary ruler orders his subordinates to begin the funeral immediately. No one dares to object to Yuan Hong, and everyone begins to carry out his order, but suddenly the sounds of footsteps are heard. Lu Zhuan enters the hall and orders everyone to stop immediately, and those present pause their funeral preparations. Yuan Fan can't believe his eyes and how this guy came back so quickly considering that his father hired professionals to eliminate him. The prince begins to make movements with his hands, like warming up before a battle. After a few seconds, he falls to the ground with full force right in front of the coffin in which his father lies. The collision of his forehead with the floor occurs with such force that blood begins to flow. The interim head of the country asked the young heir to stop his actions, urging him to maintain composure. Such desperate behavior was considered unnecessary. Yuan Fan ran up to Lu Zhuan, trying to help him and asking the guy to come to his senses and calm down. The prince of the land of monkeys realized that this scoundrel was trying to present himself as a saint and pretending that he cared, and suddenly the hand that was lying on the guy's shoulder began to sparkle with a bright light. The prince's comrade and the envoy from the north felt that something bad was brewing. Perhaps a fight would soon break out here. A few moments later, the tattoos on the guy's body began to sparkle with a yellow light, and blood-red chains appeared from his shoulders. The elder's son quickly tears his hand off, finding a severe burn on it. The eldest elder and second elder of the country were amazed at what they saw. They had never encountered such a technique before. Yuan Fan shouts angrily, pointing at his hand and asking how this scoundrel dared to hurt him like that. Meanwhile, the prince was ready to demonstrate to everyone who truly was the rightful heir to his father's throne. Lu Zhuan turns around, looks into the eyes of the one who dared to call him trash, and meets the same gaze in return. The elder's son made the decision to start the clash, foreseeing that a fight was inevitable, and he also activated his technique. Yuan Fan expressed surprise to find that trash like him had secret trump cards, and this made the guy smile. Perhaps he picked him up, believing that someone who is at the spiritual movement stage is necessarily weak. The rivals stood opposite each other, their activated powers warming the air around them, and it looked like a serious clash was about to begin. But the second elder interrupted them by putting his smoking pipe in the way. The man then turned to the air, noting that he was very lucky in the southern seas, where the chain studies the light-dominant aura, making it valuable. The prince's comrade, Sanjia, introduced himself as a member of the Kuan Pong race of the southern seas and respectfully arrived to attend the funeral. Yuan Hong thought about the fact that this person's race lived in a small area of land, and therefore did not pose a threat. Suddenly, Xiao Zhao addressed the provisional government, declaring that Lu Zhuan was her friend and she would not allow him to be wronged. The envoy, who arrived on the orders of the emperor of the northern territory of the wolf race, expressed condolences to the ape race. The chief elder was angry when he learned about the girl's origins, and was outraged that this guy was able to gain such support. 3 heroes stood in front of the tomb of the king of the country, ready to make every effort to ensure that justice prevailed. The people present began to beg the highness to let them go. Everyone came up with their own excuse, mostly pretending to be sick. Guyu Jiao stated that she did not have time and intended to leave, which greatly angered her father, who called her a scoundrel. The girl asked why her father was still near this man, because all the others had already left. Immediately after this, the second elder became ill and began to cough violently. Lu Zhuan instantly ran to him to help and asked Gu Lan what happened, and the man replied that he was already very old and was soon destined to join the king in the afterlife. There was blood on the napkin that the second elder used to cover his mouth, indicating the seriousness of his illness. He believed that his days were numbered, and his only desire was to see how the young prince could unite people around him. He also expressed his desire that his king's killer be found and punished so that justice would be served. The heir reported that the elder was not feeling well and sent him home, promising to visit him after his father's funeral. Lu Zhuan asked Guyu Jiao to take her father home, urging him to treat him with care, and in response the girl only snorted. On the way home, the daughter asked Gu Lan what happened to him, because just a few days ago his condition was excellent, and the man ordered her to shut up. Shao Kai showed interest and began to carefully examine the blood of the second elder. After this, the she-wolf turned to her mistress and told her interesting details related to the blood on the floor. Xiao Zhao laughed and told her friend that he was right. This city was truly funny, just like its inhabitants. Gu Lan was a mystery, coughing up chicken blood. It was clear that he was faking it, but his intentions remained unclear. It was evening in the streets of the city, and Yuan Hong was deciding important issues in his office, and something seriously angered him, and he hit the table with his palm. Such a strong blow smashed the furniture into pieces, and the man was clearly outraged that ambassadors from the southern seas and northern region had appeared here. With a raised tone, he ordered his subordinates to collect any available information about the arrivals, demanding to know all the details. Yuan Hong had been patiently waiting for this moment for many years, and these 3 had no right to stop him. The next day there was a funeral, during which many people gathered. Mourning ridges lined the path, mourning the loss of the king of their country, and the coffin was carried by several people close to the departed. Lu Zhuan walked ahead, instantly lost in thought about what was happening in the palace and the strange behavior of those around him. The king rested in the monkey crypt, which formed a huge rock in the shape of a screaming monkey. After a few minutes of travel, they reached the gates of the royal family crypt. The senior elder stated that he was ill and did not want to go further, and for some reason he did not want to accompany the deceased. The second elder reminded him that he could not just leave, because his duty was to help the prince, and they should open the gate together. In response to this, Yuan Hong laughed, saying that if the young heir is not able to open the gate on his own, then he has no right to enter the family crypt. Zhu Chun, who was standing in the crowd, laughed and asked if the famous monkey prince could not open the stone gate. Then the mighty thug noticed two acquaintances in the crowd, and from his expression it was clear that he was still dissatisfied with them. But someone paid attention, and the she-wolf cast a predatory glance at him and growled, and this made the man instantly change his confidence. He did not want to repeat the experience of fate. The prince realized that he would have to open the gates of the family crypt himself, but this did not cause him fear, and he walked up to the gate and put his hands on the cold stone. After some time, the gate began to slowly open, and a beam of golden light entered through it. Everyone present looked in amazement. Such a sight does not occur every day. Lu Zhuan strained all his strength to cope with the task. Usually in such moments, someone else helps the relatives of the deceased. Finally, the gate finally opened, and this surprised Yuan Hong, who expected that the guy would fail and disgrace himself in front of everyone. When the gates opened, the guests saw what the last path for the members of the Lu family represented. Lu Zhuan, using his chains, took his father's coffin and walked with it to the family tomb. Yuan Fan and Guyu Jiao wondered why a weakling like him could enter there while they couldn't, and both of them were at a higher level of spiritual power. Gu Lan ordered these people to be silent, reminding them that anyone who was not a member of the royal family and dared to pass through the gate would die immediately. When the prince crossed the threshold of the long bridge leading to the tomb, the chief elder thought that today the Lu Wu Ji line would cease to exist. Having passed through a bridge that looked more like a column, the guy found himself in front of a massive stone slab. For a moment he froze, immersed in his old memories, and the reason for this was the inscription on the gravestone where his mother rested. Having recovered, Lu Zhuan hurried to finish his work, and he placed the king's coffin inside a high slab, and another name appeared on it. Before leaving the place, he once again bowed deeply to his father and promised that he would find the murderer and take revenge despite all the difficulties. Following this, powerful thunder was heard, lightning struck, and the ground beneath the heir's feet trembled. This caused him to fall off the bridge, falling down while struggling to cling to a stone pillar and causing his fingers to become covered in blood. For a moment, he managed to hold on to the bridge, but suddenly the blood flowing from his wound began to leave his body. It was strange because for some reason the pillar was sucking his blood, and the situation was getting worse. Lu Zhuan could no longer hold onto the stone with his hand, and if he continued, he would soon die from loss of blood, and he had to let go of his hand. As he falls, the prince tries to hold on with his chain, releasing it upward in the hope that it can catch on something. Suddenly, a huge column begins to collapse, the top layer falls off, and unusual matter becomes visible underneath. When the entire top layer has disappeared, it becomes clear that the legendary De Huang artifact has been here all this time. An ancient legend said that the king of beasts will ascend to the throne, capable of changing destinies, but this will happen only when all four sides find peace. All this time, while the prince was crossing the gates, the ambassadors and guests were engaged in endless conversations and gossip. Sangjia had more important things to do. His scout was expected to return to him any minute with vital information. This scout was a little animal who told the guy that Songhaya had been captured by bandits in the Sky Monkey Mountains, and Sangjia wondered why the man could not please the bandits. Xiao Zhao stood taller than all the other guests, climbed a high cliff with her wolf, and thought about her task. Her sister tasked her with finding the formula for an artifact, and one of the artifacts was activated on the other side of the gate, but Xiao Zhao did not know about it yet. Suddenly, her necklace began to glow, and it was the second artifact, and its glow indicated that the solution was close. The girl quickly understood the signal and told Xiao Kai that they needed to split up in order to quickly find the necessary formula. Likewise, in Sanjia's hands, his umbrella, the third of the 4 artifacts, began to resonate. At this time, an elder was captured in the robber fortress in the Sky Monkey Mountains. A couple of bandits are discussing what is happening, and in fact this man was bait for Lu Zhuan, but one of the bandits does not believe that the guy will fall for the bait. The gate to the fortress is destroyed by a strong flow of spiritual energy, and the bright blue glow of the impact can be seen far away. It was Sanjia, who decided not to wait for his comrade and went to help the elder himself. The guy finds the man and invites him to leave, but he asks the young man to run as quickly as possible, because this is a trap. Suddenly, a huge dragon troop trap seal appears under their feet, and Sanjia quickly creates a barrier, holding herself with the man. However, Yuan Song soon appeared behind them, and he didn't care who this person was, and today he must die by his hand. Lu Zhuan at this time was lying unconscious on the other side of the gate, and a huge artifact fell to the very bottom of the tomb and remained standing upright. Xiao Zhao continued to look for more clues, but at some point her necklace stopped glowing. Suddenly, she noticed a man who had been following her for a long time, and the girl asked him why he was following her. It turned out that Sanjia was not just a country envoy from the southern seas, and he was the son of the emperor of the Kuan Pong race, and whoever harmed him would become the enemy of the entire country. In response, Yuan Song laughed, knowing that this guy's country was small, and now his father would become the emperor. The man asks Sanjia to retreat and save his life, but the prince of the South Sea country refuses to do so. At this time, the chief elder's son completed preparations for his attack, and a huge dragon headed out from the skies. But suddenly, out of nowhere, an ice wolf appeared, rushed up towards the dragon and easily repelled his attack. Yuan Song couldn't believe that his strongest technique was immediately repelled, and everyone turned their attention to the one who summoned the snow beast. It was Xiao Zhao, and now it was time for her to take the stage. After some time, Lu Zhuan woke up and was surprised to find himself on a huge hand. His head hurt terribly, but he was lucky. He survived, thanks to his red chains, and if not for them, the pillar would have absorbed all his blood. The guy couldn't imagine that the stone pillar contained the Feng Siyuan artifact, one of the 4 legendary weapons, and apparently Lu Zhuan's blood woke him up. People had been searching for this weapon for centuries, and owning it promised to become an emperor without much effort. The prince began to hope that the artifact would help him avenge his father and restore justice. Suddenly he realizes that the hand he was standing on belongs to a living giant ape. When Lu Zhuan was little, his father showed him his vein, the explosion of which looked like that of a giant golden monkey. The monkey lets out a loud scream and the guy realizes he's going to have to fight, so he uses the red chains to tie up the giant. He uses the wriggling dragon technique, but the monkey easily breaks his chains with his hand. The prince rises into the air and sends a fiery writhing dragon towards the enemy. The fiery serpent wraps around the neck of a huge animal, and at this moment Lu Zhuan tries to use the moment and instantly uses another technique. This technique, called the Hornless Dragon, was summoned using dark chains. Despite the guy's best efforts, the monkey easily repelled his attempts, and he needed to immediately come up with a plan. Despite the difficult situation, Lu Zhuan's face sparkled with a smile, and he found this battle exciting. In the end, the dark dragon was defeated with one blow, and the fire serpent was consumed by the giant, and this creature turned out to be incredibly powerful. Suddenly, the wriggling dragon seal on Lu Zhuan's left hand completely disappeared, and he didn't understand why this happened. The situation was becoming more tense by the second, and now the hero had fewer attacks at his disposal, and the giant monkey was even more angry. As a result, They found themselves near a huge slab with the names of all the members of the royal family who left the world of the living. The animal jumped to the level of the prince, and where it landed, the stone floor collapsed. The monkey rushed towards the guy with a wild cry after approaching, and now he needed to use all his strength to win. Despite the difficult situation, Lu Zhuan continued to smile, and since he returned to his home country, he had not encountered such a magnificent battle. This was just a warm-up, and he still had something to show today, and pushing off from the ground, he headed towards the giant with his fists at the ready. Deciding to gather all his remaining spiritual energy into one blow, the heir attempts to send his opponent flying. His energy takes the form of a huge monkey, and this technique is known as Tong Bei's fist. As a result of the power of two powerful entities opposing each other, the guy moves into the space between the worlds, absolute emptiness. The golden beast moves with him, marking the beginning of their fight. As it turned out, the wriggling dragon did not die, and in fact, it was pulled into the body of the golden monkey, and the red pillar represented a spiritual weapon. There are two dragons in Lu Zhuan's body, and the golden coil dragon and the black hornless dragon, and the black pillar represents the essence of the golden monkey and explores the explosive power of the Monkey King. The writhing and hornless dragon ends up in Lu Zhuan's body, in his blood vessels, reducing his strength by half. The next moment, it becomes clear that the female dragon is seeking to connect with the male, and the two entities are heading towards each other. They get closer and closer, and when they collide, the space around them compresses with great force. At this moment, the giant monkey began to emit a bright golden light. Apparently, a special connection arose between it and the hero. This turned out to be true, and as a result of the contact of the two dragons, a connection in the form of two chains arose between Lu Zhuan and the beast. At that moment, the guy felt incredible strength inside him and screamed at the top of his lungs, as if rage was bursting out of him. As a result of this resonance, both opponents had clubs, and now it was safe to say that their duel had just begun. The prince was not here by chance, and the destiny of the Buddha always destined him for great things, and he was destined to become the greatest of all. While in the bandit camp, Xiao Zhao continued to beat Yuan Song, who fell off the cliff several times and was seriously injured. The elder approached the guy and told him that his father's plan would not come true, since his highness had already arrived in the capital. Yuan Song smiled when he heard this, because he believed that his father had been commanding the monkey army for a long time, and the entire clan had stopped obeying the Lu family many years ago. Right now, Elder Fu intended to finally end the life of this young upstart. However, the guy had no intention of dying here, and with a grin on his face, he took out some medicine from his pocket and immediately swallowed it. Thanks to this pill, he completely recovered and gained great strength, while the image of a large monkey appeared on his back. The girl, the guy, and the old man were amazed. They had never seen such things before, and these medicines seemed absolutely incredible. The rivals looked at each other. Each of them understood by their gaze that Yuan Song had his own plan. A few moments later, the guy used the power he acquired thanks to the tablet and destroyed the rock on which the heroes stood. Xiao Zhao, Sanjia, and the old man, along with fragments of blocks, fell from a great height into a deep river. In addition, it was raining, and huge boulders of stone fell into the water. The splashes from their fall scattered in all directions. During this time, the prince was able to defeat the golden monkey, which gave him the ability to use the power of the wild golden monkey. The artifact also absorbed the twin dragons. Suddenly, a cloud resembling an umbrella appeared in the sky, and the hero realized that it was a sign and his friend Sangjia was in trouble. Yuan Fan turned to his father and said that a message had just arrived from Heavenly Monkey Mountain. Everything was going according to plan, and these fools had fallen for the bait. Yuan Hong was delighted to hear this, and now the young heir had lost support from both the southern and northern regions. How is he going to defeat him now? Just as this thought flashed through his mind, a huge beam of bright golden light came through the gate, aimed straight at the Sky Monkey Mountain. Yuan Song went down to the river to ensure the death of his enemies, and his father provided them with a pill that completely released his spiritual power, rendering their rivals powerless. Instead of confirming his victory, the guy saw a huge whirlpool in the river, which after a few seconds shot up 30 meters upward. It was the creation of Sanjia, who mastered the art of controlling water and summoned a 9-headed water serpent. Yuan Song looked up and couldn't believe his eyes, and then he heard the voice of a girl nearby. This is a messenger from the northern lands who asked why he was so surprised, and in her arms was an unconscious old man holding his teeth. The girl liked Sanjia's water magic and waved her hand, offering him to sell this kite. Sanjia's attentive gaze was directed at her, and with a face full of hatred, he uttered just one word, kill. Xiao Zhao was shocked, and perhaps she misunderstood her comrade, but his behavior was quite scary. The girl decided not to test her luck and ordered her wolf to quickly run away, and this guy clearly went crazy. The next moment, a water snake appeared in front of them, and the girl and her pet barely had time to dodge the attack. They continued their flight into the forest, but the snakes had no intention of stopping and continued to chase them, and Xiao Zhao had to defend herself by riding Xiao Kai. The situation was extremely difficult, and the 9-headed water serpent was a concentration of spiritual energy in the water, and the girl's companion clearly possessed something similar to an artifact, which made his strength enormous. Sanjia has been hovering in the air all this time, and red fire is pouring out of his eyes. Suddenly, the girl noticed that her necklace began to glow again, and she realized that her artifact and the guy's umbrella were resonating. The ambassador from the southern seas continued to attack her nonstop, and in the end the girl found herself in a very dangerous situation, surrounded by water snakes. At the last moment, she was saved by Lu Zhuan, and his appearance was accompanied by a huge beam of golden light, and his monkey protected Xiao Zhao from the water. The guy asked his friend what happened and why the elder was unconscious, and the girl replied that he had lost consciousness. The prince noticed that his staff began to glow with the same bright light as Xiao Zhao's necklace. But there was no time to find out the reason yet, since Sangjia was furious and was now trying his best to kill them. Lu Zhuan realized that he had to fight one of his trusted comrades, and despite the difficulty of the task, he had no choice. Actually, this turned out to be not such a problem, and his brother spent his whole life in the southern seas and became nervous, being on land for too long, and the prince decided to quickly correct this situation. The girl began to heal the elder, asking her friend to be as careful as possible, since this snake was extremely powerful. The heroes approached each other, and it seemed that a serious fight was ahead, in which both could suffer greatly. Instead, the young heir used some kind of technique, and his brother instantly came to his senses, his eyes returning to normal. They then shook each other's fists, a sign of their unbreakable bond, and apparently this was not the first time this had happened, and Sangjia did not remember anything about his madness. They soon returned to their friend, who had just finished treating the elder, and they needed to leave this place as soon as possible. Xiao Kai began to growl menacingly when she saw the envoy from the country of the southern sea, and he, in turn, did not understand what caused such a reaction. The man turned to the highborn and said that they needed to leave immediately, since the great elder would arrive here any minute. The robbers' fortress on Sky Monkey Mountain was completely destroyed, and the hostage escaped. Yuan Hong was already here with his son, and apparently he had underestimated the young prince, and it was clear from his expression that he was very annoyed. He clenched his hand into a fist and with one blow broke the rock next to him, and tomorrow, at the ceremony of choosing the king, he will ascend to the throne, and this brat will be torn to pieces. The next day, it rained heavily with thunderstorms again, and right now the coronation ceremony was about to take place in the Heavenly Path Palace. All the important people who are now in the land of monkeys gathered in the main hall, and now the issue of choosing the ruler of these lands had to be decided. They had been waiting for one of the potential participants for quite some time, but he was very late, and Zhu Chun suggested starting without him. The chief elder began the negotiations, saying that despite Lu Zhuan's royal blood, his abilities would not be enough to rule such a large country. Immediately after these words, a messenger of the Golden Lion race, called Goldie, enters the hall. He and Xiao Zhao looked at each other. Apparently, they had met before and their relationship was tense. Apparently, he had friendly relations with Zhu Chun, and they addressed each other as brothers and said that they had missed each other since their last meeting. Goldie sat down at his table and asked the prince if he was the same Lu Zhuan, the rightful heir to the throne of the king of the land of monkeys, and the hero confirmed that this was the case. Suddenly, the messenger from the land of the lion activated his spiritual energy. The displeasure expressed by the young man addressing him without getting up from his seat was obvious. Everyone present was amazed by his spiritual power. It was simply colossal, and everyone in this room felt how it enveloped him. Yuan Hong decided to take advantage of the circumstances and reminded that he had more than just the Boar Emperor as his allies, urging the southern seas and northern region to remain reasonable and avoid conflicts over this weakling. Yuan Fan thought with a smile on his face that now it would be difficult for the prince to get out of this situation, and his father would receive the king's throne. But Lu Zhuan was not going to give up his claim to the throne, and he also activated his spiritual energy and made it clear to everyone that while in the land of monkeys, one should not give commands. As a result, the entire hall was filled with powerful spiritual energy, and the atmosphere became very tense. Goldie assessed the guy's abilities with all professionalism, and the spiritual power of the rightful heir to the throne was not inferior to his own. The chief elder was shocked, and he had never seen such a technique of using the law of the golden monkey using its weapons before. His son could hardly believe his eyes, and how could Lu Zhuan have such power while only being at the divine soul stage? Zhu Chun at that moment realized how lucky he was to be alive in that situation, because this monkey had incredible power. The situation was only diffused by the second elder, who coughed loudly, and his daughter anxiously asked how he was feeling. This made the guys cool down a little, and both calmed down and returned to their seats, and now was not the time for a fight. The prince immediately ran up to Gulan and asked how he was feeling, and the old man's words said that his bones could not withstand such pressure. The second elder noticed that Highness's abilities had emerged, and now they should be enough to ascend to the throne. Despite the restoration of his abilities, there were rumors that Lu Zhuan was not a purebred monkey, since his mother was from another country. The elder's words caused fury, and in reality these rumors were pure heresy, having nothing to do with the truth. The men continued to argue, stubbornly trying to prove their point. At some point, Gu Lan got tired of this endless controversy, and he proposed sticking to the traditions of choice, asking the second elder to train in an ancient tower that opens once every 4 years. If the guy can place in the top 10, that will be enough reason for him to be crowned, and he can take his father's throne. If he fails, he will lose the opportunity to ever become the leader of the ape race. Yuan Hong set strict rules, and now the only question is whether the heir will refuse the challenge and enter the training tower. Lu Zhuan believes that getting into the top 10 is not enough for him, and if he aims to become the head of the monkey country, then he needs to demonstrate a much more impressive result. Promising everyone in the gym that he will pass the test in the training tower and take first place there, Lu Zhuan decides to prove his ability. Yuan Fong already has a plan to convince the prince to stay in this tower forever. The scene moves to the western wasteland, to the palace of the White Tiger, a cold and harsh land. A young man sits on the roof of one of the buildings, holding a chicken in one hand and an egg in the other. From his gaze, it seems that he is trying to discover one of the inhabitants of the fortress, but they all somehow miraculously disappeared. Not finding anyone, the guy decides to go downstairs for a more thorough search, and he clearly has important business. At this time, the elder of the city is running along the nearest street, as if he is running away from someone, and the old man opens the door of the barn, hoping to find shelter, but it turns out that there is no free space there. Left with no choice, the elder hides inside the barn, saying that it fits here quite well. This young man was called Buku, and while walking down the street in search of residence, he suddenly heard a noise from a nearby building. After a few seconds, the doors burst open and the people inside ran out, and the young man was delighted to meet everyone. It turned out that all this time he had been looking for them to ask a very important question, something really important. After his words, all the people fled in different directions, and apparently, such situations were commonplace here. In the end, only the elder remained, and Buku approached him and asked which came first, the chicken or the egg. The old man suggested that the egg probably came first, but the guy asked a question, and where did the egg itself come from? And apparently intelligence was not Buku's strong suit. A question arose that even the elder could not answer, and at that moment the old man found a way to keep his ward busy. The student had to go to the ancient training tower, where he could find answers to all his questions. Soon, the ancient training tower will open again on the Beast continent, and the sons and daughters of each race will unite to train together. These young talents develop their skills, and thus the clans become stronger, and apparently, the inhabitants of the fortress appreciated the old man's plan. In addition to the 4 royal races, the elder was aware of the presence of representatives of the heavenly dog, red-eyed frog, and divine crane in that world. Buka's eyes sparkled at what he heard, and he longed for the opportunity to get there, and his decision to enter the training tower with his brothers and sisters was final. The next day the guy set off. Many people accompanied him, and the elder asked him not to let him down during training in the tower and demonstrate his skills. The old man told the young man a story about how the emperor of the Golden Lion race deprived them of treasures and committed violence, and this was the reason for their plight, because the White Tiger race used to be powerful. By taking first place in the training tower, Buku would send a strong signal of his country's strength and endurance to the rest of the races. Winning first place seems to be an extremely difficult task, but if the competition involves intellectual challenges, the guy will cope with them easily. The elder took a deep breath, unable to find words, and decided to trust fate. As they left the place, everyone around them cried, but Buku assured them that he would soon return victorious from the ancient training tower. However, as soon as Buku disappeared over the horizon, the inhabitants of the fortress began to rejoice, expressing hope for a quiet life without his restless interference. At this time, Buku set off on a long journey, eager to test his strength in the fight against representatives of other races and prove that his country remains powerful. In the southern part of the rainforest, the Red Frog race also sent a representative to the ancient training tower. Their queen, Yunwu, stood on a grand pedestal, surrounded by her brothers and sisters who expressed support and wishes for her success. In the near future, Yunwu is going to set out on a journey to the training tower, aiming to prove that she is the master of this forest. Before leaving, she assured her comrades that they could count on her victory, promising to return all lost valuables. At the same moment, in the north of the southern tropical forest, a representative of the black python race, Jiang Man, lay in wait for his victim. Hearing that the strong representatives had gone to the ancient training tower, Jiang Mang also decided to go there. After this, he gave the order to his huge winged serpent to head to the tower, hoping that there would be worthy opponents there for an exciting duel. On Divine Crane Island, someone was currently honing their skills, and a huge fire crane was soaring high above the ground. It was Lu Feng who decided that he needed a real and strong opponent to hone his fighting skills, and he already knew where to find him. Using his special technique, Lu Feng created a pair of huge wings on his back, providing himself with a quick path to the desired location. At the time of the special test in the Wolf Fortress, it was decided which of the candidates was worthy of becoming a representative of their race. One of the elders used a special technique, turning into a huge northern wolf, and the newcomers had to endure at least 10 seconds in the arena with him. At first glance, none of the cadets coped with the task, but one of them was still conscious and muttering something to himself. When the exam leader completed the countdown, the one lying on the floor exclaimed joyfully, having managed to deceive the elder. The former wolf said that all the newcomers this year are weaklings, they could not stand even 10 seconds, and at the same time they dream of getting into the tower. But suddenly one of them stood up and declared that he was Godahu, who had used tactical feinting, which, in his opinion, gave him the right to pass the test. The man is outraged by this turn of events, believing that this cannot be considered a victory, but the head of the exam stated that simulating death is also a skill, and the guy deserves to go to the tower. The lucky one immediately set off, possessing the ability to turn into a polar wolf. Soon the heroes reached the city of the ancient tower, where they had to fight with the strongest representatives of other races. Suddenly Yunwu appeared in front of them. Her landing was very loud. Even the stone floor under her feet cracked. Lu Feng arrived for Yunwu, who called the girl a small toad, and he was interested in how she was going to get into the tower with such insignificant power, and in general, considered everyone present to be weaklings. This guy was incredibly arrogant. He was offered a duel right here and now, but the representative of the Sky Crane race did not want to waste his energy on trash. At some point, Lu Zhuan approached him, telling the upstart that apparently he had not been beaten enough in the Southern Sea, and Lu Feng was just a loser who was still trying to pass himself off as an important person. It turned out that the whole trio knew each other, and the representative of the Toad race also became angry at the sight of the prince, but immediately after that someone put a hand on her shoulder. It was Sangjia who asked the girl to calm down since it was inappropriate now, and Yunwu was surprised to see him, but still listened to his advice since they had met before. Lu Feng demanded the return of the red chain, promising a quick death in return, and the representative of the crane race was ready for a fight. But Lu Zhuan replied that he obtained the chain with his own strength, and now that the tower is open, there are countless treasures to be discovered, and compared to Lu Feng, he considered him a boy incapable of obtaining anything. Lu Feng recalled that in their last fight, the victory was brought to the prince by the help of the Emperor of the Seas, but now he cannot survive. The heir decided to test everything in a duel, activating his power of the Law of the Golden Monkey and taking his new artifact into his hand. In the next second, the guys attacked each other with their weapons. Their forces were incredibly huge, promising an exciting duel. Suddenly, a huge spirit of a white northern tiger appeared between the opponents, so powerful that it forced both opponents to pause their fight. It turned out to be Buku, who for some reason did not want the fight to start ahead of time, and using his ability, he pushed the prince and the representative of the crane country in different directions. However, this guy from the north not only stopped the fight, but at some point also absorbed the spirit of the golden monkey and the divine crane. Everyone who watched this was amazed. Who was this person? And his strength was like quicksand, and it was obvious that he had great power. Buku stopped the fight to prevent a murder between the guys, and he reminded them that fate did not bring them together for this, and Lu Feng asked him who he was to interfere in other people's affairs. After that, the representative of the White Tiger race introduced himself, and the guy was friendly and behaved like a real warrior. Immediately after this, the ancient training tower began to descend from the sky, signaling the beginning of the upcoming test. The heroes have been waiting for this moment where they can test their strength and demonstrate what they are capable of. Along with the tower, for spirits of fundamental beasts descended from heaven, which were supposed to open the gates to the tower. Among them were the flame-eating demonic boar, the dark depths demon, the nine-headed golden lion, and the moon-consuming celestial wolf. The appearance of these creatures turned out to be spectacular, and the animals, along with the tower, slowly descended from heaven to earth. The people standing below at that time looked up in admiration, each seeing in one of the beasts the true essence of their strength. Lu Zhuan promised himself that he would definitely bring back the mystical monkey beast. Buku saw a golden lion with 9 heads and instantly realized that this beast represented the spirit of the Western lion race, whose state had oppressed its people in the past. However, the guy quickly switched gears and, noticing the prince among those standing, turned to him, offering to conclude friendship. Lu Zhuan agreed, and immediately after that, the representative of the White Tiger country asked if he could ask him a few questions, since they were now friends. The heir agreed, believing that this would not be a problem, but as soon as Buku opened his mouth, millions of questions on all topics began to fly out of him. The representative of the country of the divine crane noticed this and smiled sarcastically, which irritated the prince. The two hated each other deeply. At this time, the ancient tower completely sank to the ground, and stones with hieroglyphs began to fall from it, one for each participant. It turned out that this was their test, and whoever could collect the maximum number of these medals would take first place. As soon as the conditions of the battle were announced, all participants immediately rushed to the entrance to the tower, which was located directly below them. Unfortunately, Xiao Kai was too old to enter with her mistress, and the girl reassured her wolf by declaring that it was not her fault. Suddenly, the beast turned to Lu Zhuan and ordered him to take care of Xiao Zhao. It turned out that all this time the she-wolf could speak. Now the three heroes were fully prepared to begin their first test and find out who would be the strongest in the end. As he climbed up, Lu Zhuan shouted to the others to hold on tight, because entering the tower was not an easy task. A few seconds later, the prince found himself thrown out in an unfamiliar place, where trees grew around and leaves from their branches fell to the ground. The hero rose to his feet and looked around, and finding himself in a magical forest, he noticed rocks and thick fog. Suddenly the guy noticed movement behind him, and it turned out that it was a huge living tree getting ready to attack him. When Lu Zhuan's gaze met the huge tree, it let out a loud cry, expressing its displeasure at the unexpected visitor. The tree raised its huge roots and tried to pierce the prince with them, but he dodged at the last moment. At the eye level of the huge creature, Lu Zhuan decided to use his unique artifact, and the staff began to glow with a bright golden light. Lu Zhuan dealt with the enemy with one blow, and the tree broke, and pieces of wood scattered in all directions. At the place where the remains of the plant scattered, an unusual glowing bonus stone appeared for the winner of the fight. The prince joyfully took his reward, a wood crystal. Such a pure mineral was difficult to find anywhere else. After looking around, the guy found that his comrades were nowhere to be found, and it seemed that the tower had separated them, and Sangjia and Xiao Zhao were somewhere else. There was a skirmish not far from the hero, and the winner was quickly determined, with the loser offering to trade his emblem for his life. But the winner asked if he would try to take revenge after leaving the tower, and the guy lying on the ground abandoned this idea. The winner did not believe him and decided to finish him off by charging his fist with lightning-like energy. Suddenly, a huge glowing staff appeared between them, and the energy from the blow was completely absorbed. Lu Zhuan, with a wave of his hand, returned his weapon, and he decided to stand up for the loser because killing in this place was completely unnecessary. The young man simply smiled, considering that receiving another medal was just a routine event for him, and besides, he liked the hero's weapon. The beaten guy hid behind the prince, declaring that he had seen him below, and begging for help, and the stranger, who had won the battle, declared that everyone in the tower must be destroyed. If he truly believed this, he should have been prepared to lose, since he had no chance in a duel with Lu Zhuan. The stranger tore his clothes and invited the prince to test whether he could cope not only with a fight, but also with a sharp tongue, and the hero gladly gave the upstart a lesson. Lu Zhuan told his opponent that he could defeat him with one fist, and in response, the upstart said that the guy would regret his words. Their fists clashed, but after the collision the prince remained standing while his opponent flew back. But the upstart did not give up and, despite everything, strived to become the winner in this fight, having previously announced his next attack as a thunderous one. Lu Zhuan responded by activating his Golden Monkey Law technique, which was much more powerful than his opponent's, as everyone present realized. The upstart was unable to resist this attack and flew several tens of meters away, crashing into a rock. Throughout the entire fight, an unknown girl, well acquainted with Lu Zhuan, was observed, capable of taking on the appearance of other people. Finding out that the battle was lost, the upstart had no choice but to give his two emblems to the winner. The wounded guy stood next to the prince, offering him to return the medal that he had lost, but the hero was not going to work for free. Suddenly, a familiar voice spoke to them from behind, and a man who looked like Sangjia greeted Lu Zhuan. A man who looked like a friend of the heir asked why he was acting so strangely, if he recognized him. The coincidence was surprising, because the prince was just about to go in search of his friend, because they were brothers. Lu Zhuan offered to join him in searching for Xiao Zhao, and his expression showed that he was suspicious of something. The fake Sangjia waited until the guy turned away and declared that he would now lead him to her, turning into a huge fox. Immediately after this, the heir activated his technique and hit the imposter hard, causing the fox to fly several meters away and crash into a tree. Her disguise was perfect, and the girl could not understand how he could recognize her under this appearance, and this thought did not leave her. It turned out that the real Sanjia speaks the monkey language poorly, and as soon as the hero heard his speech, the entire cover collapsed. Now the guy wanted to find out who she was and why she needed to take the form of Sanjia. The girl looked down on him, and if he wanted the answer to this question, he would have to catch her first. After these words, the stranger ran away, and Lu Zhuan rushed after her, thoughts flashing through his mind that his brother could be in danger. After a few minutes, the chase led them straight to the mouth of a volcano filled with lava. The hero asked the mysterious woman what she wanted from him, and now she had nowhere to run and had to tell what happened to Sangjia. In response, the girl smiled, and there was no fault in the matter of her comrade, and her goal was to bring the prince to this place. A moment later, she disappeared, and an unfamiliar seal appeared under the heir's feet. It turned out that it was Yuan Fan who was hatching a plan to eliminate his rival away from prying eyes. The son of the temporary ruler activated his technique and ordered the boy to kneel, and the boy seemed to be naive. Lu Zhuan used his Feng Siyuan golden monkey technique as soon as the opponent approached, and the two engaged in combat again. Yuan Fan was surprised at such strength, and where did this weakling get such a staff? And yet he easily repelled the white monkey's generic blow. Yuan Fan could not let this opponent survive, because he posed a serious threat to him and his father. The son of the chief elder promised the heir that today he would die at his hands. Seconds of growing tension all around, and suddenly the stone began to split under Lu Zhuan's feet. Eventually the rock broke and the prince began to fall into the mouth of the erupting volcano, and only a miracle could save him. Huge pieces of stone fell into the hot lava, dissolving instantly, and in a few seconds the guy could have stayed here forever. Luckily, a familiar water snake appeared out of nowhere, grabbing him and pulling him from the clutches of death. It was immediately clear from the technique who had come to the rescue, and Sanjia was fine, but there was nothing to rejoice about, because something bad had happened. For some reason, Feng Siyuan's golden monkey spirit began to flail around furiously, emitting a loud howl as its energy scattered in all directions. Meanwhile, in another part of the forest, Xiao Zhao noticed that her moon talisman had begun to glow again, and it seemed that her friends were somewhere nearby. From the forest, the girl hears the sound of someone running towards her, and it turns out to be Go Dahu, who, running away in horror from a huge stone golem, prays for help. The girl immediately recognizes him. They are both from the same region and have crossed paths more than once within the walls of the fortress. Xiao Zhao easily deals with the stone creature, and by turning to the guy, she reminds him how to address her when they are outside their country. Godaho hesitates for a few minutes, but then remembers that the girl told him to call her by her name when they are in a foreign country. But there is little time left for talking, and the girl's necklace suddenly sparkles like never before, and she realizes that at that very moment something is happening inside the volcano. Right at the top of the cliffs, Yuan Fan fights against two opponents at the same time, dropping the head of one of the water snakes, and his anger is directed at Sanjia, who prevented him from eliminating his main enemy. The son of the chief elder continues to attack tirelessly, and the prince's protector becomes extremely difficult to resist, and he tries with his last strength to activate his most powerful defensive technique. At this moment, his opponent decides to strike a decisive blow, using all the remaining spiritual energy. Sangjia finds himself in a difficult position, but to his surprise, a huge snow-white wolf comes to the rescue, destroying Yuan Fan's technique. He can't believe his eyes and who dared to interfere in his fight again, and Sangjia instantly realizes who saved his life. Xiao Zhao asked him about his condition, but brother Lu Zhuan replies that his physical condition does not matter since the heir needs much more help. The prince remained in danger, lying on a piece of stone that could fall into the lava at any second. The girl asks her friend to stay here and help her brother, while she herself goes downstairs to try to get the guy out. Go Dahu happily agrees to help, and in such situations he could always be relied upon. Xiao Zhao jumps down, and her acquaintance tells Sanjia that he can rest and calmly watch how he makes a fool of the enemy, but it seems that his talkativeness was much more developed than his fighting skills. When the girl reached Lu Zhuan, she immediately noticed Feng Siwen's staff in his hands, and she was finally able to find this ancient artifact. The situation was difficult. The spirit of the golden monkey was stealing the body of the young heir, and if this continues, everything could end very badly. Xiao Zhao touches her necklace, and a bright blue light begins to sparkle around her. She finally discovers the artifact she has been looking for many years, but it was closely connected to her brother. Their essences were intertwined, and now the staff is drawing power from him, and at this rate he could die. This glow indicates that Xiao Zhao is trying to contact her older sister, and she finally succeeds and explains to her relative that she intends to save Lu Zhuan. A few moments later the answer came, and the sister agreed that the prince needed help, and fortunately he was saved. At that moment, the girl's artifact began to sparkle brighter, and a beam of white light burst out of it, heading towards the body of the motionless hero. Several moments passed, but the prince was eventually saved, and the golden monkey spirit retreated for a short time. When Lu Zhuan came to his senses, the first thing he saw was his girlfriend, and the recent events were a mystery to him, and he was amazed by what he saw. Her whole appearance was covered in sweat, and it was clear that she was very tired, and after she made sure that his comrade had come to his senses, she fell exhausted. To save the young heir, she had to use up all her spiritual strength, and now she could not stand on her feet. They needed to leave this place as soon as possible, and realizing this, the guy hurried up, and his staff underwent significant changes after the incident, and the red chains on it connected. As soon as Lu Zhuan took his weapon in his hands, it instantly lit up with a bright golden light, which was quite unusual. A vision occurred before his eyes. A girl similar to Xiao Zhao was pierced by an artifact. The vision appears to be a foreshadowing of his girlfriend sacrificing her life to save the prince. At this time, the fight continued on the top of the cliff. Yuan Fan unleashed his attacks on his opponent, ordering him to yield as he only needed Lu Zhuan. Despite this, Sangjia had no intention of retreating, and he stubbornly held on to his artifact, using all his spiritual energy to maintain the defensive technique. In the end, he received support in the person of his brother, who repelled the enemy's attack and expressed gratitude for the help. The heir to the throne of the land of monkeys asked his comrade to take care of Xiao Zhao, while he himself decided to deal with the remaining enemy. The chief elder's son was surprised at how long this guy from the South Sea country held out under his attacks. However, in the end this became unimportant, since today he was going to finish off the heir, and the monkey race, in his opinion, should belong to him and his father. Lu Zhuan responded to this by saying that the monkey race is not some kind of prize that can be won, and it will never belong to these people. Then came a powerful blow, from which Yuan Fan flew several meters away, and his strength was depleted because he had been fighting for a long time. No matter what level of divine fusion he was at, he still lacked the strength to fight the prince. However, Yuan Fan has found a way to respond to this power, and if he does not have enough strength at this stage, then he will go further, because his family has access to any medicine in this world. After taking the magic pill, the guy felt a surge in his spiritual power, while activating the last phase of his white monkey technique. He looked at his opponent with some contempt, and is the only way for his family to gain strength is through pills, and how can such people lay claim to his father's throne? At this moment, Both competitors were preparing for the final clash, their spiritual energy on the verge of exhaustion. Channeling all his power into a special tsunami strike, Yuan Fan watched as Lu Zhuan prepared to deflect it. A lot of high-density water burst out from the blade of the son of the temporary ruler, aimed directly at Lu Zhuan. But the hero easily repelled even such a powerful attack, inflicting heavy damage to the enemy, who began bleeding. Despite this, Yuan Fan stubbornly stood on his feet, and the fight was not over as long as he had even a drop of strength left, and after the previous attack, he found himself next to Go Dahu. Fang Siyuan, strengthened after his enhancement, dealt with heavenly fusion-level enemies without much effort. Deciding to take his chance, the guy from the north bit the villain's hand, and Yuan Fan was dumbfounded by such a cunning blow and asked how he dared to do such a thing. The son of the temporary ruler reminded Lu Zhuan how lucky he was to avoid certain death this time, but warned that he would not be able to avoid it next time. The villain quickly leaves the place, and Go Dahu smugly tells how just one bite from him caused such a powerful enemy to instantly flee. It was a funny sight, but no one argued with him, and Lu Zhuan simply looked at him in amazement. Finally, the heroes had time for a little rest, and they decided to get food, and for this, Sanjia offered to catch fish. He was a master at fishing, but it seems that today he was not destined to eat. All the catches cooked on the fire were instantly eaten by Go Dahu. At this time, Lu Zhuan and her friend were talking nearby, discussing what had happened. Xiao Zhao carefully bandaged the guy's wounds, and he thanked her for saving him on the volcano. She claims that gratitude is not worth it, and at that moment her necklace glowed faintly. Xiao Zhao admits that all her desire is connected with the search for Fang Siyuan and the restoration of the lunar talisman within herself. The prince was amazed to hear her talking about that very lunar talisman, one of the 4 great artifacts. Only now the guy notices that his staff begins to react more strongly in the presence of the girl, and he expresses gratitude to her for saving her and promises to help her in her aspirations. Suddenly, their conversation was interrupted by a piercing cry for help. Someone shouted Xiao Zhao's name, and it turned out that it was Go Dahu, and his face seemed somehow strange. Something really happened to this guy. He ran to his friends in tears, declaring that he had been poisoned. Go Dahu didn't even have time to reach his friends. He fell just a few centimeters from them, and the girl asked what substance he was poisoned with, because his condition was quite frightening. Sangjia joined them, holding uncooked fish in his hands, and Lu Zhuan immediately guessed that the guy was poisoned by this unripe catch. Go Dahu felt awkward, realizing that he had reacted too emotionally, and the young man apologized to his girlfriend, realizing that he could have died now. After a few seconds, he was overcome with an urgent need to visit the toilet, and he hurried away, looking for some bushes, wanting to avoid additional embarrassment. At this time, Lu Feng continued to win the sequence of duels, and after a day of participating in the tower trial, he had already accumulated many tokens. After winning another fight, he was wondering why such scum came here in the first place, and suddenly someone snuck up from behind. Yuan Fan slowly emerged from the darkness. Having learned that the guy from the land of the divine crane was the enemy of his enemy, he proposed to make an agreement. But Lu Feng did not even want to listen to him. He was not interested in communicating with the number 2 of the representatives of the monkey race, and these words greatly angered the son of the Supreme Elder. Yuan Fan insists on his position, telling the crane that he knows the reason for his hostility towards the prince. The representative of the divine crane country didn't care. This information could not influence the situation, and he did not want to join forces with someone like him. Yuan Fan claims that he is not weak and would be able to kill the young heir in a single fight. However, due to his powerful allies, this turned out to be impossible, and it was to their advantage to join forces, and suddenly Lu Feng agrees. At the same time, he sets one important condition, and he has to take the life of Lu Zhuan, the son of the Supreme Elder, and he does not seem to mind. In another part of the forest, the representative of the Toad Country was thinking about how to defeat her enemy named Jiang Man. Noticing that the forest is full of valuable materials, she decides to purify them to gain greater power and avenge her sister. Suddenly, she hears a hiss behind her and turns around to see a poisonous red snake falling on top of her. Yunwoo quickly takes out a dagger from his belt and cuts the snake in half, and then someone calls out to her. He is a member of the black python race that killed her sister several years ago, and he praises the girl and notes that her skills have grown significantly since their last meeting. Jiang Man expresses his gratitude to Sister Yunwoo for being the one he absorbed in the past, which allowed him to become stronger and take the post of head of the Black Python. Yunwoo flares up with anger, and all previous meetings with this man ended in failure for her, but today she vows to kill him with her dagger. The snake representative rejoices as food now comes to him on its own, and he wonders how much stronger he will become by consuming it. However, the representative of the country of toads suddenly disappears right before Jiang Man's eyes, and not a trace of her remains. Jiang Man is surprised, and he has never seen such a technique before, and now he needs to be careful because his opponent may be somewhere behind. This is exactly what happens. Yunwoo jumps on top of his enemy, intending to finish him off with a precise blow from his dagger. The head of the Snake Clan was prepared for this, and he reacts instantly and delivers his blow faster, and as a result, Yunwoo receives a serious injury, bleeding from his mouth. She has to step back, land, and realize that he has become much stronger since their last meeting. Jiang Man slowly approaches. When he comes close, he is ready to swallow the girl. When the man opens his mouth fully, he looks more like a snake than a man, and he believes that it is the destiny of each of the frog races to become his dinner. Yunwoo found herself in a critical situation and needed to do something immediately, and with no other choice left, she had to resort to the last card up her sleeve. The huge snake was ready to swallow her, but at the last moment she was saved by a water snake, throwing the villain away from the girl. The representative of the country of toads was very frightened and at first did not realize what was happening, and after a few seconds it became clear to her that Sanjia had saved her. She looked at him with gratitude, shone through tears in her eyes. But Jiang Man was not going to give up, and he finally takes the form of a snake and says that today he is lucky because he will be able to absorb 2 young talents at once. The man thought that eating the South Sea guy would be a much more impressive victory than this pathetic frog. However, this fight ends quickly, and many water snakes did not give the python a moment of rest, attacking at the first opportunity, and Jiang Man could no longer resist and decides to flee. As soon as the battle is over, Go Dahu immediately appears on the spot, and he asks not to thank him, explaining that it was thanks to the fact that he went to look for a cure that they were able to find a girl from the land of toads. Yunwoo approaches his savior, tells him his name, and asks if he remembers their previous meeting. Meanwhile, an important guest arrives in the Cloud City, and his accompanying soldiers ask everyone around to give way. This was the second prince of the lion race from the western plant, Goldie's younger brother. His name was Jing Xiao, and he also had scarlet hair. The guy became interested in some stone with hieroglyphs, and he began to carefully study it, while his assistants discussed their difficulties in finding the Wolf Queen for several months. There were rumors that the girl was participating in the tests of the ancient tower, providing an excellent opportunity to get the lunar talisman. Jing Xiao carried with him a special artifact given by his father, which allowed him to teleport to any place. By activating this item, a beam of golden light shot up from his hand, and he was going to prove his worth to his father as the best heir. At that time, Lu Zhuan was having fun inside the tower, and this time he discovered a huge octopus in the water and decided to check. Perhaps he would be given another crystal for winning. Jumping on the creature's head, he struck hard with his staff, and a blue gem appeared from the wound that formed on its stomach. Xiao Zhao admires her friend's speed and is sure that he will become an excellent king, but the guy says that his goal is even higher, to become the emperor of the monkey country. After this, his girlfriend felt sad, and she knows that being an emperor is very difficult, and when her sister became the empress, she had to go through a lot of difficulties and was too weak to help. The heir tries to cheer her up by saying that she is very strong and invites her to absorb the water crystal, promising to make sure that no one bothers her, which brings a smile to Xiao Zhao's face. Immediately starting her meditation, Xiao Zhao held an unusual blue stone in her hands, which levitated, and at that moment she absorbed its spiritual energy. Xiao Zhao quickly recovered. The main thing was that no one would interfere, and yet suddenly someone appeared from the water behind the guy. It was Buku who emerged from the water and asked if the two were having a secret date just now. The heroes were embarrassed and ordered Buku to talk less, but the representative of the white tiger race did not understand why he needed to stop talking. Soon the rest of the guys joined them, and Yunwu really liked Buku's shiny bald head, and now all 6 of them gathered together. Their conversation was interrupted by thunder coming from above, and a whirlwind formed in the sky above them, and a second later lightning struck from its center. At the sight of the lightning strike, a huge root began to quickly sprout, and all the soil under the heroes' feet began to crumble. Within a minute, a giant tree grew on the rock, its branches growing hundreds of meters in all directions. Lu Zhuan remained on a piece of stone that was held by tree branches, and he tried to find his friends, but at one moment a voice addressed him. It was Jing Xiao who trapped Xiao Zhao, and the guy was pushed straight down from the cliff, and the girl could not hold him. As he fell down, the prince exclaimed to his friend to stay strong, confident that he would soon return for her. After the fall, the heir found himself at the very base of the tree, and he had a long climb up the roots, but he was determined to find the one who was behind the incident. As he climbed higher, he discovered that precious stones and gold had appeared on the tree. His father talked about the legendary myriad tree growing in the endless world, and whether it could be that same tree, and why it turned to stone. The guy in the golden armor arrived through a crater in the sky, and if the crater remained open, then they were still above, and Lu Zhuan had to hurry up and save his girlfriend. Suddenly he is attacked by the tail of a huge snake, and the guy has to jump to the side to avoid the blows. Taking up his weapon, he asks who is there, but the snake does not answer, and she begins a monologue about how, thanks to quality ingredients, she was able to take on her true form. It was Jiang Man, but Lu Zhuan doesn't have time to waste on fighting and says he needs to save his girlfriend, but the snake replies that he should take care of himself first. Lu Zhuan is trying to get away from this fight because Xiao Zhao is in trouble, and he doesn't have enough time to waste it on such fights with this idiot. Continuing to run away, at some point a strong blow lands directly on the snake's head, and it gives up trying to eat the prince. The attack was indeed successful. The head of the Python clan had a wound on his forehead, from which blood flowed. This attack was initiated by Yunwu. She climbed down the branches and was going to once again try to take revenge on her main enemy. The girl took responsibility, since she and Jiang Man still had one more unfinished business that concerned only the two of them. Lu Zhuan expressed gratitude to his friend and wished her good luck in the duel, after which he hurried to help Xiao Zhao. At this time, the girl was at the top of a huge tree. She was placed in a golden cage, which was carefully guarded. Jing Xiao pointed a spear at her and demanded that she give him the moon talisman. This artifact was really important. But the heroine refused, not wanting to hand over this important artifact to the idiot. In response, the second prince of the Golden Lions said that he would leave this place only when the sand stopped flowing in this clock, so they had enough time. At this time, a new fight was flaring up below between a girl from the country of the Red Toad and her sworn enemy from the country of the Black Python. Yunwu drew her dagger and rushed to the attack, seeking to complete everything here and now in order to restore her sister's honor. Jiang Man grinned, because the idea of /U200B /U200 revenge seemed to him a fun reason for a clash, and he took with him many lives from the Red Toad tribe, and now the girl was going to repay her fellow tribesmen. In the middle of the battle, she suddenly disappeared, just like earlier at the river, and this time, however, the man felt an unknown threat. The next moment, a massive hand fell on him from above, the result of a special divine strike from a frog. The toad's paw forcefully pressed Jiang Meng against the stone cliff, creating enormous pressure that began to destroy the surroundings. Immediately after this, the girl prepared the next blow, filling her lungs with air and preparing for action. This attack was a wave that spread out in all directions, but the enemy was nowhere to be found, and she called for him to appear because the snake was about to meet with its creator. Python was still behind her, taunting Yunwoo as she tried to destroy him with a weak move, and now it was time for him to respond with an attack. The man summoned a huge purple python, preparing to destroy the girl with one blow, but she summoned a giant frog in response. The frog tribe member used her technique known as Crimson Eyes Light Arrow, and at that moment, her eyes flashed with a bright light. In the next second, concentrated rays of spiritual energy burst out from her eyes, heading straight towards the eyes of her opponent. The man lost his sight from the blow, and his technique was blinded, and he could not understand how this tiny frog could cause him such damage. Yunwoo quickly decides to finish Jiang Man by jumping on the snake's head and preparing for the finishing blow. She succeeds, and in just a second the snake's head is separated from the body, and finally, the girl takes revenge for her sister. However, just when she thought that everything was completed, a dark purple mist appeared around her, and somewhere in the distance the voice of a python was heard. For some reason, the snake's body continued to move even without the head, and Yunwoo takes out his dagger and pierces the hard scales several times, trying to free himself. Suddenly the girl realizes that her knife has pierced her own shoulder, and it seems that she has fallen into an illusion. Unfortunately, it was true, and the man asks her how it feels to realize that you are in a trap from which there is no way out. No one could get out of the black python illusion, and Jiang Man advises Yunwoo to obey, and he will absorb her calmly. The girl finds herself in a difficult situation, and she only managed to ask her sister to pray for her, after which a huge python swallows her. The snake continues to hiss, and this queen red-eyed frog turns out to have quite a tasty taste. When Yunwoo found herself in the body of a python, she found herself in a strange place that resembled a huge fire whirlwind. This was actually the inner core of her enemy, and everyone who was swallowed by the snake ended up here. In the very center of this place, a sphere was burning. It was from it that all of Jiang Man's energy emanated. Yunwoo decided that if she managed to destroy this object, the snake would definitely die. She pulled out her dagger and headed towards the large black ball of pure energy, but she couldn't get close enough. Suddenly, a huge fire snake appeared out of nowhere, which threw her back, and when he saw the girl, he remembered that she behaved the same way as her sister, who also tried to resist the absorption. If someone tried to destroy his core, he would have to try again in his next life, since now he was going to absorb Yunwoo. Then the large leaf hat the girl was wearing began to dissolve, and at first it would appear that she had given up and accepted her death. However, Yunwoo was not going to wait for the next life to end Jiang Man, and now she was going to end him once and for all. Events take us several years ago, to the palace of the Kuan Pong race, where the girl made a request. She asked permission to meet with the king of the underwater race, since the head of the black python was threatening the rainforest and killing everyone, and she begged for help in destroying this creature. Sanjia came out to her and handed her a small box with a special pearl that could pacify the energy of pythons. However, to own this pearl, its owner had to be very strong in both spirit and body. The girl sincerely thanked the prince of the underwater race. Now she had a way to defeat her sister's killer, and Sangjia wished her good luck. This was exactly the thing Yunwoo was going to use now. In her hand she resembled a large drop of water. Suddenly, a huge phoenix composed entirely of water appeared beneath her, allowing her to rise high into the air. The fire snake immediately realized what this object was and was surprised how this treasure of the underwater race could end up in this toad's possession. Jiang Man did not recognize this, and today was the day for him to go to his creator. The princess of the land of toads, sitting on a huge bird, finally completed preparations for the most important blow of her life, and a few moments later the pearl flew into the core of energy with great force. Under the influence of this attack, the core shattered into pieces, and the huge snake simply evaporated, leaving not the slightest trace. Yunwoo knelt down and sobbed, and she wondered if her sister had seen this fight, and finally she managed to bring justice. At this time, Lu Zhuan continued to climb up the petrified tree, and right now he is surrounded by unusual spider-like creatures. Suddenly he heard cries for help, and it seemed like someone was in trouble, and the guy immediately rushed to the place where the voices were coming from. Rising a little higher, the hero notices that someone has fallen into a giant web. It was Buku, covered in cobwebs, asking for help, and the prince asked how he ended up here, caught in the cobwebs. When Buku heard his friend's voice, he was overjoyed, and the web was in front of his eyes, and because of this, he could not see anything. A swarm of terrible spiders appeared out of nowhere, wrapping him in a web, and Lu Zhuan ordered him not to move, promising to free him. With a deft movement of his staff, the guy cut the huge web and freed his comrade. Buku thanked his savior, and he was afraid of spiders, and the heir told him that their friend was kidnapped by a guy in golden armor. However, the northerner was more worried about the spiders, and suddenly one of them fell on his head, and out of fear he grabbed onto Lu Zhuan. The prince announced to his comrade that he had just destroyed all the spiders in the area, and therefore they had nothing to fear. These creatures were unusual spiders. Their bodies consisted of a unique material that the guy saw for the first time. Suddenly he notices that the same creatures are approaching from all sides, and there were many of them, which seemed strange, considering that the heir had just destroyed similar spiders. Spiders were everywhere, on every branch, and there were a huge number of them, and Buka asks his friend how this is possible, and he killed everyone around him, and now they have appeared again in even larger numbers. Suddenly, all these creatures gather in a huge pile, and after a few seconds a man lands there. He is a bald man with a flute in his hands, with many piercings in his ears, and he warns the guys to be on guard, because the enemy is always on the way. It turns out that the guy from the north knows this man, and according to him, they haven't seen each other recently, and the man with the spiders asks if he liked the spiders, because he carefully prepared them. In reality, it was Buka's older brother, and the younger brother asks him why he disappeared for so long and how he manages to control these creatures. The man replies that the question does not matter because he became what he is through his efforts. After this, the elder brother begins to play his flute, and under the influence of this melody, all the spiders around begin to gather together. Ultimately, these creatures came together to form a flower, on which the musician continued to play his instrument. This mass of spiders transformed into a huge white tiger, a unique technique created by the man himself. Lu Zhuan was ready to fight, but was stopped at the last moment by Buku, explaining that it was their own brotherly differences. Immediately, the northern boy activated his white northern tiger technique to confront his older brother. The prince realized that he would be caught without him, and hurried to his friend, saying goodbye and asking his friend to be careful. In the end, only two remained, and the man wanted to see how his little brother had grown during these 3 years in which they had not seen each other. The scene takes us back in time to the main continent of beasts, the western wasteland of the snowy mountain. Here 2 brothers once passed a special test, and now they are again walking along a huge iron chain. Suddenly, the elder brother slipped and fell down due to the ice that had formed on the iron. Only by miracle was the younger brother able to reach out at the last moment and save his relative from imminent death. The older brother insisted that his hand not be released, while the younger brother tried with all his might to pull him up. Fortunately, he succeeded, and the brothers decided to rest a little and slow down. They were both overcome with fear. Buku noticed that they were almost at the finish line, and who could have imagined that they would go all this way and survive? Their master claimed that this test would determine who would become the next master, and he asked the elder brother if the master would be nervous to see them both. But he said that he intended to finish alone, and only one could win this test. Having hit his younger brother from behind, Buka broke free from the chain and flew into the abyss. The relative stood above, smiling, believing that now the White Tiger Palace belonged to him. After some time, the scoundrel climbs to the top of the mountain, and there the elders were waiting for him, and he asks the master if the result can be announced. But the time of testing had not yet expired, and they should not hasten. The incense was still smoldering. One of the elders asks why Buku is late, and the elder brother says with a smirk that he probably won't even show up. Attention is drawn to the hand grasping the top of the mountain, and the villain cannot believe his eyes, and his younger brother survives. But it was really him, and by some miracle he managed to survive the fall from a height. The chief elder asks Buku what happened to him, and from his appearance it was clear that the guy had gone through a difficult situation. The testing time is over before the younger brother gets up, and he looks at the older brother, but he looks away. Buku lies to the elder, saying that he just slipped and fell, and he completely blames himself for what happened. The elder brother thinks that this is a bad result, and because of his mistake, he was unable to complete the task on time. Both brothers return to the fortress, and the chief elder gathers everyone to announce the results of the test and appoint a new master of the fortress. The elder was confident of his victory, but the old man calls Buku the next master. The brother is furious, and he activates his technique and is ready to tear everyone to pieces. Out of rage, the equipment changes color from bright white to almost black, and the owner ponders why he lost. Events take us back to the ancient tower, where the villain decides that killing his younger brother here will make the White Tiger Palace his property. However, Buku is not going to lose to his traitorous brother, and he activates his flaming White Tiger technique. But this blow does not cause any damage to the tiger, which consists of many beetles. This material is really very unusual. This beast was given to a man of the Golden Lion superior race, made of 9 heavens black metal. The White Tiger technique cannot compare with it. Buku cannot believe that his brother betrayed the White Tiger Palace and joined the enemies, and yet he replies that he was not recognized by the White Tiger, while the Lion clan appreciated his abilities. The younger brother reminds them that the Golden Lion race has oppressed them for many years, seeking to destroy their people. But the man doesn't care, because his younger brother himself pushed him to this, and the emperor promised him that he would get what he was entitled to. Buku wishes to teach his elder brother a lesson for allying with the Golden Lion and betraying the White Tiger Palace. The man is not at all afraid of him and invites him to test his strength, but the guy will have to work hard. The older brother starts playing his flute again, causing more spiders to appear, combining into a huge dark creature. At a certain point, it acquired the contours of a giant spider, consisting of thousands and thousands of small creatures. The man shouted towards Buku and promised to demonstrate to his younger brother the true power of these monsters, but the guy did not lose his composure and used his fire technique. After all the trials they went through together, the elder brother was ready to spare the guy if he gave up the title of Palace Master, but Buku would never agree to such a thing. The giant spider continued to attack, emitting a bright beam of golden energy from its mouth. It was a special web of spiritual power, with the help of which she tied up her younger brother and prepared to hit him with her paw to kill him. The guy found himself in an extremely dangerous situation and did not know what to do next, and out of fear he simply turned away. At the moment when his life could have been interrupted, Buku remembers his past, especially the difficult training in the fortress. At this time, he tries his best to remember a technique called Heavenly Purple Thunder, a secret technique that can help his race get rid of oppression. The chief elder addresses him, saying that he is already very old, and that he needs to become really strong as soon as possible in order to protect his country. The guy promises his mentor that he will make every effort and expend all his strength for this purpose. Within a few moments, these thoughts helped him remember all the days of training, and he successfully used Purple Thunder in real combat, blocking the spider's strike. His older brother's gaze expressed shock, and how did this young man achieve such high strength? And no one had previously been able to cope with such a blow. The guy crossed his arms above his head, and at that moment a bright purple light flashed around him. It was a strike of sky-purple thunder that shattered the huge spider into thousands of tiny pieces. The man was furious, and all the spiders were defeated thanks to the old man teaching his younger brother this secret technique. But this is not the end, and he decided to kill Buku without resorting to the help of his beasts, and he is confident that he can handle it himself. The elder brother uses his special technique to transform into his true form as a black tiger. The guy is trying to understand why his brother's true form is a black tiger, because since childhood they have been white tigers. With little time left to think, the huge beast rushes straight at him, and Buku decides to defend himself with his hat. He manages to stop the huge paws of a black tiger, thanks to a special hat made of special material. The tiger shouted that he was the big brother, and still the best in everything, and it was so before, and so now. Buku finds himself in a difficult position, having to fight his blood relative, and he combines purple lightning with his hat. A huge black tiger stabs the guy deep into the ground with a powerful blow, and in his opinion, only under his leadership will their race restore its former glory and again become the strongest in the Western wasteland. But it turns out that his blood relative is far from dead, and right now he is flying out of the hole in the stone using his powerful technique. The guy cannot die, because he promised his master to protect the palace, and he does not allow the golden lion race to subjugate the white tiger. The younger brother invites the older brother to continue their battle, and apparently, this was only the beginning of their confrontation. Buku dominates this fight, raining down powerful purple lightning strikes on the black tiger, and the beast is unable to resist it. As time passes, the fight ends in a landslide victory for the younger brother, and his relative lies on the ground, bleeding. Due to exhaustion, the huge tiger transforms back into a human, and lying there without strength, at some point his eyes begin to glow, and terrible red patterns appear on his body. After this, he begins to carry on some meaningless chatter about an endless world that will soon be destroyed, while his voice changes greatly. He also screamed about his unwillingness to die and accused the Black Hermit of deception, and Buku was convinced that the one who was now uttering these words could not be his real brother. At that very moment, the man disappeared and turned into black ash, and what did he do to get such a desired power? At this time, Lu Feng and Sanjia collided nearby in a fight. The guy from the land of the crane searched for the two brothers for a long time, but where was Lu Juan, and why was his comrade now alone? In the end, he decided that it would be even better to deal with them one at a time. Lu Feng still could not forgive the events that happened between them in the Southern Sea, and he would definitely take revenge for it. Events take us several years ago to the underwater tomb of the Red Chain of the Southern Sea. Lu Juan and Sanjia were here. They came to an artifact called the Red Chain, and the legend says that it is made of two intertwined chains that transform into dragons. After these dragons brought chaos to the Southern Sea, the ancestors of the Kuan race locked them here, making it impossible for them to escape. The Southern Sea Emperor sent the two of them to fight the dragons and win, and Sangjia was armed with an impenetrable umbrella while the prince used his fists. While they were together, nothing was impossible for them in this world, and they were not afraid of the upcoming fight. But suddenly the prince is attacked by someone with a burning sword, and it was an insidious blow, because the attacker did not even declare a fight. Lu Juan's hand was wounded, and such an act made him furious, and his comrade shouts at the aggressor and orders him to come closer. It was Lu Feng from the Golden Crane race, and apparently he was also attracted to this legendary artifact and was eager to take possession of it. His fiery blades could serve as material for an artifact, and by combining them, the item could come closer to the full form of an independent artifact. The guy from the land of the crane orders the brothers to leave, because this chain should become his, and with its help he will be able to create an artifact equal in power to the four great artifacts. But they disagree, and Lu Feng decides that he is capable of taking this item from them using his power. Immediately after this, all three engage in a duel, each using their weapons for their intended purpose. At some point, the guy from the land of the crane throws the prince back several tens of meters with a strong blow. Because of this, Lu Zhuan falls on top of the artifact, and blood begins to flow from his wounded hand directly onto its surface. After the seal on the artifact broke, two ancient dragons broke free after many thousands of years, and perhaps this was predestined. But this was just the beginning, and the guy had to defeat two majestic dragons, but he did not feel fear and was determined. Their battle continued for a long time, and as a result of the confrontation with the artifact, strange events began to occur. The non-native monkey began to merge with the red chain, indicating that the prince was able to subdue two ancient snakes, and now the artifact belonged to him. Upon completion of the transformation, the guy found himself on the surface of the water, and two tattoos appeared on his arms. It was because of these events that Lu Feng sought revenge on the two brothers, and he approached Sanjia, warning that in this battle he would be victorious, because now they were fighting one-on-one. The Prince of the South Seas only laughed in response, and this reaction greatly angered the representative of the land of the crane, and he raised his burning blades, preparing for a strong fight. Legend has it that by combining 4 legendary artifacts, you can create the ultimate beast talisman artifact. Because of Sanjia, Lu Feng was unable to take possession of the red chain and connect it with his blades, and yet the result could have been no worse than this umbrella. The prince of the country of the southern sea only laughs in response, considering all conversations to be ridiculous dreams that will never come true. Lu Feng flushed at what he heard, cursing Sanjia and accusing him of relying only on his background and umbrella in battle. However, today he intends to deprive him of this umbrella by force and use it to create the most powerful artifact on Earth. But his opponent was not going to just let go of what was rightfully his, and their fight was already dragging on. At one point, Sanjia attacks with a tidal wave, throwing the crane back with the enormous force of the water flow. Lu Feng realizes that in order to take possession of the umbrella, he needs to show maximum strength and use all his skills. This really requires effort, because the legendary artifact was magnificent, but its current owner was not inferior to it in strength. The representative of the crane country attacks again, and the Prince of the Southern Sea activates the smooth wave technique in his defense. A real fight begins, where both opponents show incredible strength, but only one will win. After another attack by Lu Feng, his opponent falls and throws his artifact and weapons onto the cold stone. Sangjia lay motionless, perhaps even unconscious, and it was unclear whether the guy would be able to continue the fight. Crane looks down on him, expressing doubts about the Kuan race's abilities and expressing the opinion that they have held the throne for too long. He proclaims that now it is his race of divine cranes who will rule on the surface of the Southern Sea. Lu Feng believes that he has already won this fight, because his opponent lies inactive, but suddenly the Prince of the Southern Seas grabbed his chest. His hand clenches tighter, sweat appears on his face, and soon he begins to growl like a wild animal. After a few seconds, the guy undergoes a transformation. His appearance changes radically, and 2 burning red lights appear instead of eyes. Crane forgets that the Kuan race cannot stay on the surface for long without a special umbrella, and he orders Sanjia to stop, but he does not seem to hear. The Prince of the South Sea begins to fight much more aggressively, creating many huge water dragons and tirelessly attacking his enemy. Lu Feng barely has time to fend off the guy's countless blows, because just now he was lying on the ground and helpless. A few minutes later, Sangjia screams with all her might and uses the secret technique of summoning the water hydra. This blow turns out to be even more powerful than the previous ones, and the crane does not have time to react, and a huge stream of water carries it several meters back, and the owner of this technique returns to his artifact. The young man from Crane Country smiled, anticipating the exciting battle ahead and about to fight this multi-headed hydra. Having risen to his feet, he eagerly awaited the development of this exciting battle, and the Prince of the South Sea was already preparing his next attack, preparing to meet the challenge of his opponent. Clenching his hand into a fist, the young warrior watched as many water dragons gathered behind him, trying to direct their power to one point. Suddenly, the water snakes are fused together, forming a huge predatory fish creature born from the combination of a huge amount of spiritual energy. Despite the monster's menacing appearance, Lu Feng was not afraid, and his determination to win this battle was unflagging. This was his chance to regain his honor and become even more powerful. But Crane's efforts were not enough to resist the Prince of the South Sea and his legendary artifact. He realizes that he has received serious injuries, realizing that this fight is probably already lost, and this becomes a great disappointment for him. He lost. He was not even able to fight Lu Juan. Sangjia had no intention of slowing down, and upon seeing his opponent lying on the ground, he determinedly set his sights on ending the battle. At this time, Yunwu appeared in the arena, noticing that her old acquaintance looked and behaved strangely. Noticing the girl from Toad Country, the Prince of the South Sea instantly rushed at her, screaming about death. Lu Feng tried to stop Sangjia, shouting that their opponent was in another place and there was no need for him to chase the girl. Yunwu remembered the prediction she heard in the underwater city, which stated that the pearl was somehow connected with Sangjia. She felt an obligation to test him and try to stop her friend's madness by pointing the pearl directly in his direction. This really helped, and Sangjia comes to his senses, even recognizes his old friend, and his appearance becomes normal again. The friend told him that on the way she met Lu Juan, who was heading to the top of the tree to save Xiao Zhao, and Sangjia decides that they need to go after him. Lu Feng lies on the cold stone, expressing his desire to continue the duel, but the Prince of the Southern Sea refuses this idea. The hero has almost reached the top of a huge stone tree, and his girlfriend has just a little left. Suddenly, a familiar voice sounds from the top, asking if Lu Feng was following him on his way here. This turns out to be Yuan Fan, who spent a long time here waiting for the prince. The chief elder's son gets to his feet and says that he shouldn't rely on the crane, and it looks like he'll have to handle things on his own again. Lu Juan realized that all events pointed to an inevitable battle and warned his opponent that this time he would not hold back, as he had at the volcano. Yuan Fan asked the hero if he knew that at the top of the tree there was the second principle of lions with the third level of supreme disasters, and yet the heir did not care who he had to confront. The elder's son grinned in response, not wanting his prey to go to someone else, and finally suggested starting a full-fledged battle. Taking out the huge sword from its sheath, Lu Juan had to feel firsthand the full power of the legendary sword of the wild boar race. The swings of this sword summoned huge and furious wild boars, but the heir was not afraid, reminding Yuan Fan of his belonging to the monkey race. The young warrior destroyed this technique with one swing of his staff, and purple spiritual energy scattered in all directions. The legendary sword of wild boars was not a toy, and the elder's son decided to demonstrate all its power and strength. Lu Juan, wanting to quickly finish off the enemy and rise up, took the initiative and attacked first. Every minute mattered, and the boy released the maximum of his spiritual energy, activating his powerful golden monkey law technique. Immediately after, he drew on the power of the twin dragons, summoning a fire dragon and a dark hornless dragon. Yuan Fan activated the mountain demon shield at the last moment and blocked these attacks, creating an incredible spectacle. Using the boar technique again, the opponent reveals his arsenal of stolen techniques from other countries. In response to the twin dragons, the elder's son summons a technique called 10,000 boar charge, filling the battlefield with a huge number of fierce animals. There were really a lot of them, and in order to evade the attack, Lu Juan was forced to act very carefully and quickly, barely managing to fend off all the attacks at the same time. The Boar Emperor himself personally taught him this technique, and Yuan Fan assured the hero that he should not worry, because there were still 10,000 of them here, and they could easily overpower him. The young heir accuses him of betrayal and collaboration with a hostile country, while his rival claims that now his fate is determined, and 3 years ago his father could have saved him, but now there is nowhere to wait for help. Lu Juan only now realized that the incident was their initiative, and asking why they did this, he receives an answer from Yuan Fang that they were never friends, and today he must die. The next moment, the hero rides on one of the boars, and his fiery dragon wraps around his neck, thereby subduing the boar's spirit. After this, he once again asks his rival who was supposed to die today, and the elder's son is stunned by what he saw. The fight continues, and the prince fights on the back of a huge boar while his rival continues to summon an endless number of wild animals thanks to his sword. For the next stage of his journey, Yuan Fan decided to turn to the use of the unique demonic mountain blade technique, and his opponent, Lu Zhuan, responded to this with a writhing dragon of protection. Despite the strength of the dark purple-hued shockwave, the dragon showed its unrivaled power, easily destroying it, and in this fight, Prince Lu Zhuan showed clear dominance. Raising his staff high, Lu Zhuan used the golden scale dragon twisting world art. The next blow was lightning fast, giving the elder's son no time to react, and under the influence of the injury, he flew several meters away, blood flowing from his mouth. The hero approached the defeated opponent, pointing his staff directly at him, and even with the help of the pig, the opponent could not cope with his power. Apparently, the fight is not over yet, since the opponent still has the last secret card, a bottle with some mysterious medicine. He swallowed an entire bottle of medicine, as at this moment he needed every drop of strength available to him. In his quest for victory, the guy overdid it with pills, and as a result, his body began to grow, reaching gigantic proportions. From head to toe, he was covered in the legendary wild boar armor given to him by the emperor of the boar country, and this armor was not only a sword, but also an artifact that not everyone could control. After taking this medicine, Yuan Fong was able to ascend to the third level of peak martial skills, reaching several levels above the prince in this epic battle. The elder's son proposed a real fight, given that now both rivals own special artifacts. Lu Zhuan decided to make a lightning attack on the fire dragon, but his efforts were in vain, since the armor absolutely absorbed all the damage inflicted, and his opponent confidently stated that even with full effort, the armor would protect him from any blow. Despite the apparent loss, the hero had no right to defeat, since not only his own life depended on his success, but also the life of his dear friend, and he was obliged to win this battle. Somewhere at the top of a huge tree, his savior Xiao Zhao was waiting. Jing Xiao said that time was running out and he would have to leave this place, and contrary to all expectations, the girl was not willing to give him the moon talisman without a fight. The princess of the land of the Frost Wolf refused to submit to his conditions, angering the second prince of the land of the Lion, and he spent several years exploring the northern region to find her, and finally found her here. From their conversation, it becomes clear that all the misfortunes that befell sister Xiao Zhao were the result of the actions of the Golden Lion clan, and it was because of them that the Wolf Queen was plunged into a deep sleep. Jing Xiao used his spiritual energy to take the necklace from the girl, and she tried to resist, but her strength was insufficient. At some point, Xiao Zhao could not stand it and screamed and turned to her elder sister for help, as she could no longer endure this horror. Suddenly, the girl completely changed her appearance, and her hair became light purple, and her eyes completely lost color, becoming completely white. It became clear that an incredible power had awakened in the girl, capable of destroying the cage where she had been held for all these moments, and the sounds of broken pieces filled the space. Within a few seconds, the girl's entire body began to emit an intense bluish light, so dazzling that the second Leo prince could hardly keep his eyes on her. When the sparkling light died down a little, Jing Xiao almost couldn't believe his eyes, and right in front of him, a completely different lady was hovering in the air, and it was the Empress of the Northern Lands. The guy experienced true delight. He was finally destined to meet the Empress of the Northern region, and it turned out that the sisters had united their souls into a single body, which is extremely rare. Her name was Ling Xiao, and she recognized the young man, and the Empress was curious how he dared to appear here after the broken inheritance ceremony, and maybe he came to atone for his sins. The second prince thought the younger sister was strange, but the eldest was even more amazing, and other than that, Jing Xiao was determined to get hold of the moon talisman, and he didn't care what the ways to achieve it were. The Empress replies that everyone is free to dream, but the guy probably won't have the strength to snatch the talisman from her. The woman summons a huge ice wolf, who immediately enters the battle, and her power is amazing, and the guy, in response, summons his unique spear, Black Cloud. Jing Shao introduces himself to the Empress as the future emperor of the Western Wasteland, claiming that today's battle is just the beginning of his path to the throne. With a spear at the ready, he rushes into the attack, and today he will definitely win the lunar talisman, ready to pay any price for it. Ling Xiao asked the guy if he was asking himself if he really deserved to want this artifact, and it was at that moment that their forces clashed in a heated battle. Taking his spear in his hands, the guy used the void-piercing throw technique, and the magical weapon instantly rushed forward, straight to attack the moon wolf. The attack was accurate. The black spear pierced right through the moon beast. But even after that, the moon empress did not change her expression, and she only raised her hand, preparing for the next blow, gathering spiritual energy. The time has come for the moon mirror technique, which can nullify all damage received in battle, and now its opponent is now without a weapon. Her soul resided in her sister's body, which they controlled alternately, and during the inheritance ceremony, her body was damaged and the empress fell into a coma. The void dance throw was easily repelled. The lunar talisman truly turned out to be a powerful artifact, and now Jing Shao felt an even greater desire to take possession of it. Her sister took care of the body, and the powerful spirit of the Empress of the Northern Lands found a new refuge. But it was important for Ling Xiao to complete the battle as quickly as possible, and this was an emergency, and everything happened so quickly that a delay in her sister's body could lead to dangerous consequences. The woman decided to use the heavenly wolf art technique, summoning a huge wolf's mouth, aimed straight at the second prince of the Golden Lion clan. While Lu Zhuan continued his duel with Yuan Fong, the elder's son taunted the prince to surrender, and he promised him a quick and painless death if he surrendered. In response to this, Yuan Fan only smiled, and it seemed to him that this upstart should have taken better care of his own life before threatening others with violence. As soon as the exchange of phrases between the rivals took place, they immediately continued their fight, creating a tense atmosphere. Suddenly, the young heir was right behind Yuan Fong, revealing a shadow cloning technique. His opponent wondered if it was possible to find something more sophisticated than a clone to defeat him, and this primitive technique looked disgusting. Suddenly, two huge arms sprouted from Yuan Fong's back. They seemed to be made of super-dense spiritual energy. Apparently, this was a unique ability provided by the boar armor, and these limbs easily developed a powerful attack on Lu Zhuan. Having struck the hero with a staff in his hand, the other hand threw him back several meters with force. As the battle progressed, Lu Zhuan began to resemble his father, and Yuan Fong and his father tried numerous times to destroy him, but each time they had to retreat. At that moment, the prince realized that they were the ones behind the murder of his father, and he could not believe his ears, because just a few years ago they were friends. Yuan Fan again realized how naive and stupid the young heir turned out to be, and finally the simple truth dawned on him. Now it's time to send him straight to his father. Right in the heat of the battle, loud sounds came from the top of the tree, and Yuan Fan instantly realized that his girlfriend was in grave danger. A woman falling from the highest branch caught his attention, and at first glance he thought it was Xiao Zhao, but in fact it was her sister in front of him. Lu Zhuan, despite everything, did not leave the battlefield, and his opponent continued to advance and deliver quick, powerful blows. While trying to repel the next attack, the hero felt that his arms were hurting, and with each passing moment it became more difficult to fend off Yuan Fan's mighty blows. Yuan Fan suggested that the prince stop resisting, and after blocking the next blow of his sword, the heir's arms were broken, and it was time to accept defeat and prepare for death. The guy was motionless, but his girlfriend still hoped that he could save her, and besides, he had an unfulfilled revenge for his father, and dying did not come into consideration here. A moment later, he shouted loudly, and at that time a stream of spiritual energy began to diverge from his body in all directions. The blast wave sent his opponent flying several meters away. The source of this power was his staff, and the spirit of the golden monkey filled its energy into the hero's body, completely restoring it, and even broken arms healed in a matter of seconds. But this was not the end, and the power continued to increase with each passing second, and Fang Siwen's spirit evolved, introducing revolutionary changes to its abilities. After some time, the guy felt an extraordinary energy inside him, which grew with every second, and it seemed that he was moving to a new, higher level of the heavenly path. Yuan Fan looked at him in bewilderment, trying to understand what was happening, and how he was able to reach the third level of supreme disasters, and maybe the staff always had such power, and what kind of artifact it was. Indeed, the reason for this sharp increase was the complete fusion of the red chains with the staff, which led to the strengthening of the artifact several times. The son of the Supreme Elder realized that if he did not destroy his enemy right now, he would move to a level of power that he could not reach, and all efforts would go down the drain. However, Lu Zhuan had already successfully completed the transition to the next level, making his weapons extremely powerful, and even the emperor of the Cabanova country himself did not pose a threat to him. Yuan Fan couldn't believe his eyes, and in the prince's hands was one of the legendary artifacts, which seemed simply impossible. The staff in the prince's hands blazed with stunning power, and the two ancient dragons formed an impressive spiral around him. The weapon increased in size, but the guy easily wielded it, and he swung it and threw the elder's son away with one blow. This indescribable power penetrated Yuan Fang, and it was indeed Fang Siwen's legendary artifact, and the decision to defeat the prince and take possession of it became his urgent task. The prince was amused at the thought that the weakling was going to take his own weapon from him. In the skillful hands of the hero, many elusive clones were born, strategically placed around the enemy and deftly driving him into a dead end. Despite the difficulty of the situation, the elder's son showed no hesitation, and these deceptive projections of his opponent did not cause fear, and it was likely that his opponent only possessed the ability to endlessly clone himself. Lu Zhuan's clones joined forces, delivering a massive blow to Yuan Fang, but thanks to his impenetrable armor, he easily repelled attacks coming from all sides. The extra arms growing from the elder's son's back turned his armor into an even more dangerous weapon. However, it suddenly became clear that the enemy was not among the killed clones, and perhaps they were all just empty images. Lu Zhuan's voice appeared in the shadows and crept up behind him, preparing for a special attack. He held a massive stone table in his hands, and it was a technique called Heaven and Earth Strike, and now the Hulk was about to smash the villain into the ground. The elder's son tensed, realizing that even his strong armor might not withstand such a blow. He had Kabanov's ball in his hands, and with great effort he tried to resist the hero's pressure. At some point, the armor could not withstand the pressure and began to crack, scattering into small pieces. As a result, the elder son's armor is completely destroyed, turning into a hopeless heap of metal, and his fear knows no bounds because it was his last hope for victory. The powerful blow of heaven and earth finally finds its target, and from the force of this blow, Yuan Fan goes deep into the ground, and most likely he is unable to continue the fight. Despite the defeat, the guy barely manages to get to the surface, and despite his defeat, he should have been grateful to fate for surviving after so many difficulties. Lu Zhuan asks the defeated man if he has thought about the possible consequences after killing the king, realizing that everything may not turn out as planned. In response, Yuan Fan says that the winners are not judged, and the king's family had no choice, and sometimes you have to do what is necessary and not what you want. The reason for their actions is that the king was being blackmailed by the Boar Emperor, the continent's most powerful ruler, and they were threatened with the destruction of the entire monkey race if they did not comply. The prince again asks why they did not resist but simply gave in to the enemy, and Yuan Fang explains that the Boar Emperor had enormous power and they had no other choice. The hero claims that in order to save his and his father's skins, they will have to admit their mistakes, and in response to this the guy agrees, nodding his head. However, when Lu Zhuan looks away, Yuan Fan states that he would still be better off dead, and instantly fires a crystal demon arrow at the prince's back. The prince easily repels this insidious blow, and his heart is saddened that his former friend does not appreciate the chance at life given to him. The hero deals a fatal blow to his opponent, and suddenly Guyu Jiao runs up to them. She finds it hard to believe that the guy was able to defeat the elder's son. With Yuan Fan finally finished, Lu Zhuan can now go to the treetop to save his friend. At the top of the tree, the fight between Ling Xiao and Jing Xiao continues, and the guy continues to throw his spears while the Empress attacks with her moon wolf. The body has reached the limit of damage and can no longer hold the elder sister's soul, and she should hand over control to Xiao Zhao as quickly as possible. At this time, the guy reflects that if their race can capture the lunar talisman and combine it with the seal of horror, they will receive an artifact of incredible power. He turns to the Empress, saying that she is sorry that she does not have the chance to see what will happen here soon. Ling Xiao replies that as long as she is here, her father cannot even dream of such a development. The Empress is finding it increasingly difficult to cope with the second prince's attacks, and this body is preventing her from using her spiritual power normally, and this duel must be completed as quickly as possible. Jing Xiao claims that his father is the strongest of the four emperors, and after she was injured at the ceremony, she can no longer compete with his father. The dispute between them continues, and everyone tries to prove that it is his plan that will come true today at the top of the tree. For a moment, the Empress realized that her time in this body was coming to an end, and in a few minutes control over it would return to her younger sister, leaving behind only the memories of the battle. Under the pressure of the new spear strike, Ling Zhao's ice protection shattered into tiny fragments, like a whirlwind of wind dispersing fog. It seemed that her body was on the verge of defeat, awaiting the decisive blow from the enemy. And so, at the very last moment, Lu Zhuan intervened, and wielding the power of his artifact, he threw the enemy aside, preventing his attack on the Empress. Jing Zhao's anger flared up even brighter from the courage and impudence of the uninvited intervention, and he wanted to look into the eyes of this hero who decided to stand in the way of his fight. The mysterious question of who he was thrown into the air, and Lu Zhuan answered without hesitation as Lu Zhuan, the only rightful heir to the throne of the land of monkeys. Jing Zhao's curiosity regarding the idiot Yuan Fang's loss remained aside, and without much importance, he ordered Lu Zhuan to leave and not interfere with him to complete his duel. Lu Zhuan had no intention of leaving, and the fire of determination burned in his heart, and no matter who stood in front of him, if someone offended his loved ones, he had to be taught a lesson by standing by his beliefs. Standing between the second prince of the lion race and the Empress, Lu Zhuan stuck his glowing staff into the ground, and the complications around him created a void in the floor, and Jing Xiao rushed down miserably. The new rival realized that he had to face a strong opponent, and no matter what happened, Lu Zhuan was ready to protect his loved ones. Immediately after this, the prince turned to the Empress. First, she reminded the guy of decency and asked him to call her Your Highness, and Lu Zhuan in turn asked if she was really Xiao Zhao's older sister. Ling Xiao announced that she would soon fall asleep, and since her younger sister trusted the hero, he should take control of the moon talisman for a while, and this was her order. This information raised many questions in the prince's mind, but, unfortunately, the Empress did not have time to answer them. As soon as she finished her words, her eyes immediately began to glow with a bright light, and after a few seconds, Xiao Zhao regained control of her body.